Good evening, everyone. It is Monday, October 18th at 6:30 p.m. and I will call to order the Freetown Board of Selectmen meeting. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and being available on our town's YouTube page and as well as by Zoom. So due to the fact that it's on Zoom, I have to read the Governor Healy's orders. This meeting will be available for in-person attendance and on Zoom. On March 29th, 2023, Governor Healy signed into law Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, which, among other things, extends the expiration of the provisions pertaining to open meeting laws to March 31st, 2025. Specifically, this extension allows the public body to continue holding meetings remotely without a quorum of a public body physically present at a meeting location and to provide adequate alternative access to remote meetings. This meeting of the Freetown Board of Selectmen will be conducted in person as well as via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information for general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public can be found on the Town of Freetown's website page, freetownma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen to the meeting may also do so in the following manner. Download Zoom and enter the meeting ID below, calling the number listed below, and entering the meeting ID listed below, and or going to website address and entering the meeting ID listed below. Although in-person attendance is available for this meeting, every effort will be made to ensure that the public body can adequately access the proceedings in real via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so despite best efforts, we will post to the town's website and YouTube channel an audio or video recording transcript or other comprehensive records of the proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. All right, so thank you. And we're actually going to start with Personnel Board. Take it over.
Thank you, Jared. Item agenda number 1 for this evening is the discussion and vote whether to approve the appointment of Michael De Silva as laborer for the Highway Department effective October 2nd, 2023, and that's based on completion of pre-employment paperwork. So it's pretty straightforward. The Highway Department needed a laborer. We interviewed a handful of people, and Mr. De Silva was the person we selected. So based on the fact that we won't have a meeting on the 2nd, we might as well do it today. Appoint them, and then anything, depends on what happens. If we can keep it or move it down the road. So this just gives us the ability to move forward. So, did I get that right? All right. That said, I turn the motion to approve the appointment of Michael De Silva as laborer for the Highway Department effective October 2nd, 2023 through June 30th, 2024.
I'll make that motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Yes.
Yes. All right. So agenda item number 2. Discussion and vote to open the special town meeting warrant for 10/23/2023. So obviously straightforward, it's just opening it up. So with that, I will entertain a motion to open the special town meeting warrant for 10/23/2023.
Motion made.
I will second it. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye. Yes.
Yes. I apologize. I did also want to mention that Selectman Matthews won't be here tonight again as he welcomed in a beautiful baby boy into the world. So congratulations to Selectman Matthews and his family, and we wish you all the best and look forward to seeing you in meetings again soon. So agenda item number 3, discussion and vote on whether to add the articles to fund electronic voting equipment presented from the town clerk. So where it is?
Let's say 11.
All right, so I'll read a quick explanation. The explanation of this article. This article would allow the town to purchase handheld voting devices for use at town meeting. These devices would count votes, providing faster and more accurate results than hand, voice, and paper voting. So as everyone's aware that whenever there's anything that's remotely close in voting, we have to, manually hold up tags, and this will allow us to do it all privately. In our seats without having to have people come around and count and holding up the tags. So I think it's a no-brainer to add.
Yeah,
to be
I
honest
think
with
so
you.
as well.
I think privacy of voting is huge, and so yeah.
No, yeah, I agree with you. This is keeps us current, keeps us the technology, making sure we can vote, keeps the privacy of voting, right? If needed, right? Maybe you don't feel comfortable voting a certain way. This way gives you the ability to vote your conscience the right way, right? So moving forward, this is the way to go. I think this is like you said, a no-brainer.
It looks like they're, just so everyone's aware, they're about $16,000, so it's not really that expensive in the grand scheme of things. So with that, I will entertain a motion to add the article to fund electronic voting equipment presented from the town clerk.
Motion made.
I will second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Yes. Agenda item number 4, discussion and vote on whether to add the article to pay prior year's invoices from facilities. Pretty straightforward, obviously. Looks like we had, appreciate it, about 6,000. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. It's just these last two. So there's one for $289 and one for $3,295. So obviously we got to pay our invoices. So
Yeah.
which is all right. So with that, I will entertain a motion to add the article to pay prior year's invoices from facilities.
Motion made.
I will second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Selectman Lopes?
Yes.
Selectman Zager?
Yes. Agenda item number 5, discussion and vote on whether to add the 2 articles for the purpose of leasing the roof of the Freetown Elementary and the roof of the parking lot at the Freetown Police Station to install solar. So explanation of this article is these articles authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into a lease at the police station to authorize and erect a solar array for both the roof and a portion of the parking lot. The town would receive a reduced rate of electricity use at the police station, and then basically the same thing I'll read, I guess, on the next one. Explanation of this article. This article authorizes the select board to enter into a lease of Freetown Elementary School to authorize the erection of solar array on the roof. The Freetown Lakeville Regional School District would separately enter into a power purchase agreement with the solar energy provider and would receive a reduced rate on electricity used at Freetown Elementary School. Everyone talks a lot about going green, and we've had a lot of residents ask us about putting solar up at different locations in and around town, and we had some solar companies that did a lot of studies on things and found really where it made sense for us to put solar. And it looked like at this point, these were the best buildings and areas to put them in. So, I think it's also another good step in the right direction with keeping the look of the facilities the way they are. Because that's also got to be noted. We built this beautiful location, and we don't want to just make any kind of eyesores out of it. So that there was also a lot of thought that went into, how specifically with this location, how it would look.
Absolutely. We could have put solar just about anywhere, and we decided to put them here. So you're right. So that residents wouldn't have to drive by it and look at solar panels. They may be efficient and green, but aesthetically, nobody wants to look at them, right? So putting on the roof of the FES and here on the parking lot on this corner, great idea. And not to mention, as costs go up, this will offset some of those costs. The 2 most expensive buildings in town. So win-win.
Sorry. I never thought I would be this quiet, but here I am. All right. So with that, I will entertain a motion to add the 2 articles for the purpose of leasing the roof of the Freetown Elementary and the roof and parking lot of Freetown Police Station to install solar.
Motion made.
I will second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Selectman Lopes?
Yes.
Selectman Zager?
Yes. All right. Agenda item number 6, discussion and vote on each article of the special town meeting warrant for 10/23/23, whether to include on the final warrant of the Board of Selectmen's recommendation for each article. All right. So we'll try and go through this as quickly as we possibly can, I promise. All right. So the first one is to create the opioid settlement stabilization fund. This is something we have already talked about in a prior meeting, so I don't know that we really need to go through this one. The second one is to authorize how we want to spend the money once we create it, because we need to have somewhere it goes to and how to spend it, right? So we want to have some more discussion. Do we think we should hold off on that discussion at this point? I want to have some more discussion personally. I just think about, I want to make sure everyone's on board with how we spend the money.
Absolutely.
Or who spends the money rather than how we spend it.
I think the thought process is that tonight we would finish the warrant because we have to publish it in 2 weeks.
Okay.
And we're not having another meeting. So we can take that off the warrant and that's fine. The money will go into the stabilization fund. And then in order to spend it, it will require town meeting vote. So
Okay.
if it doesn't get moved to a vehicle for it to be able to be spent, it will stay there until we go to town meeting. The other thought is, I mean, we can maybe do a quick Zoom meeting prior to the warrant needing to be published. I just don't know if we can make that happen with everybody's schedules. So I'm okay with whatever you do with it. We currently, just so everybody is aware, we have $15,000 of opioid settlement money. So it's not a huge amount of money at this point. I do know though that Reverend Dias has been, has requested that money to help continue what he's doing over there, which he has like an outreach center that the state has funded for him through the end of December. He's requested that the town help him with that mission and give him some of our opioid settlement fund money because that is what he's working on over there. I know he's talked with the Board of Health, and they're interested in funding him. How much has not been really discussed. So I just don't want you to put something off if he's in need and that's something you're interested in doing. Trying to give you the whole picture. If you certainly could authorize the selectmen yourselves to spend the money and then at a future vote push it over to the Board of Health, if that's what you want to do, or
Yeah,
again,
I mean,
you
I
can
guess-
table it and we can try to have a meeting.
I guess my only thought is, and obviously I'm open up for any suggestions, is we haven't talked with the Board of Health, right? Do we know what is the Board of Health asking for the money to spend it and how they want to spend it?
In all honesty, my approach at the town hall has been like, you guys deal with this. It's your wheelhouse. It's something I don't have time for. And there's certain things you can spend it on all around addiction and opioid use. And it has to do with, possibly supplying the police station with Narcan or different things. And so I felt like it's better suited for them than it was for me and our board. And I will tell you in all honesty, I just created this article because as I was reading the articles, I realized there was no way to spend the money, right? We're getting the money, we're putting it into a stabilization fund for opioid uses, but we had no vehicle to get it out and spend it. So nobody's seen this article. The Board of Health hasn't seen this article, so I don't want you to think I've circulated it. I've circulated the warrant, but that article wasn't on it. So there has not been an outlandish discussion.
So I guess. Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm being picked up on the other mics and not this one, so I'm afraid the feedback loop. So. Oh no? Okay. I'll just speak louder. Sorry, everybody.
So I guess my only concern with it is that if we haven't talked to them how they want to spend it, do we shift it over to them and then have them say, well, what are we doing with this money or whatever? But I also like the idea of them having it in the sense that that's really their wheelhouse, to your point, right? So I guess Phillips, how do you feel?
No, I think ultimately it'll end up in their court, right? 'Cause it is within their scope of work, right? But it is so new, and I don't even know how many different places we have in town, right? You mentioned Reverend Diaz. Is there other locations in town? I can think of one other, but I'm not sure if they are able to take that in. Also, like the idea you talk about Narcan. Do we supply our police and fire with more Narcan? So there's a lot of things that I want to know more about before we just. Not to say that they won't do the same thing, the Board of Health, but if we have to make a decision today, I would say let's do a joint for now, right? And then move it off our table if need be at the next meeting, at the annual town meeting.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess if anything, we would just table this and then bring it back up on the.
Do we table it and then bring it up at town meeting and change it on the floor? Or do we have to do it prior to that? What I don't want to do is create the fund, then essentially creating a bank account without the password
Well,
for a
that's-
year. I don't want to do
that's
that.
what the first article does. It
Right.
creates the bank account, but you can't get, nobody has the card to get the money out.
Right.
The second article is the one that would allow you to flow it through to the Board of Health. If you want to change that to selectmen, we can change that to selectmen. And then you will control it, and the Board of Health will come to you and make a
Yeah.
request. I do know that they've talked about funding Reverend Dias. We've talked about other things. We've talked about having speakers come into the school. We have talked about different things, but they are way more on top of it than me.
Yeah.
I've
That's-
I've just been like, okay, what do you guys? And they've given me their 5-minute rendition.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't want to have people waiting. I don't want to spend all night on this,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I guess I'm starting to think about it. I just kind of feel like I almost want to just leave it underneath them. I don't see it as being a huge issue. It's $15,000. It's what do you think?
At this point, we just leave it the way it is and then change it as we need to.
All right.
And it's not the taxpayers.
Right, it's not taxpayer dollars, it's what we get from the state.
Exactly.
So I just want to make sure we spread it out. We're not just. My concern is we get $15,000. Doesn't seem like much, but it can be to certain programs. We make sure if we have multiple programs, they each get a piece of the
Yeah,
piece
I
of the
agree.
pie versus just having one person take it all. Then
Mhm.
I don't want to play favorites. I don't want, not that we're doing that, but I want to make sure the money goes to what's needed and we have a whole town, not just one location.
Yeah.
That's my
been
concern.
that's been my understanding from what they told me.
So we'll leave that as is
Yeah.
for now. So then it's the funding of the opioid, the OPED, other post-employment benefits, and this is just basically us trying to catch up, right? Something that we're way behind on. So the next article is a capital project to fund free cash. This was a change in dollar amounts, basically to reflect the way of the world now. So hopefully that we'll be able to buy the vehicles that we want to get. So not an
Cross our
issue.
fingers.
Yeah. Increase the whole state allowance. This is the stuff we've talked about. Consider higher asset limits on certain real estate taxes. Talked about that already. So allowance to increase gross receipt limits and whole estate limit qualifications. Allow annual increase in exemptions from real estate taxes. Designate the selectmen as appointing authority for the bylaw review committee. In article change bylaw article 3 to make up an appointments of bylaw review committee. This is a change where we struck out the town administrator so that there was an odd number, so that way in the event of voting, it would be a tiebreaker, so to speak. So increase in funds on council on aging department. So should I even read all these? Because I think maybe I should just read the ones that if there was any change, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think the changes that we haven't talked about on public.
The one, there's repair and maintenance on town ways. So the highway department, highway surveyor has asked for some additional cash in order to try and get some of these roads fixed that he feels that are subpar. So we had a discussion on this at the last meeting. So we did make a change in the amount, and it reflects there's $500,000 to go after quite a few roads that need some. So, and then the next thing that we have, this is a new article to fund the purchase of the electronic voting equipment, which is what we had just talked about. And then the solar power purchase agreements for this facility, as well as Freetown Elementary, which is something we've already talked about. So I think with that.
Yeah, and the only other thing, I think I put numbers into the stabilization funds.
Oh,
So last time they just had a blank. So funding the stabilization fund, I am adding $100,000 to that fund.
oh
And
yeah.
then funding the capital stabilization fund, I'm adding $1 million to that fund. Now we're still
That's-
waiting for free cash to be certified or to be even solidified. So this may change based on free cash.
I like saving money.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to hear that something went from the placeholder of 100,000 to $1 million. So.
That's good news for everybody. It means it goes back into our coffers. So perfect.
All right. So with that, I will entertain a motion to finalize the warrant for the Board of Selectmen recommendations for 10/23/2023 for a special town meeting. Just wanted to clarify that.
Sure. Motion made.
I will second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Selectman Lopes,
Yes.
Selectman Zager,
Yes. Sorry, good catch. I almost started talking right over you there, Luzerne. All right, so agenda item number 7, discussion vote on whether to approve, finalize, and close the special town meeting warrant for 10/23/2023.
Motion made.
So I will entertain a motion to approve and finalize and close the special town meeting warrant for 10/23/2023. I will second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Selectman Lopes,
Yes.
Selectman Zager,
Yes.
Trying to get in front of you.
Agenda item number 8, discussion and vote on whether to approve the agreement between the Town of Freetown Environmental Partners for engineering completing the MS4 permit for years 6 and 7. So this is something that we have no choice in doing. Basically, we have to do it. So we have the agreement, and it's all pretty standard to me. So
No, I didn't have any questions on it.
perfect. All right. So with that, I will entertain a motion to approve the agreement between the Town of Freetown Environmental Partners for engineering completing MS4 permit for years 6 and 7.
Motion made.
I will second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Selectman Lopes,
Yes.
Selectman Zager,
Yes. Agenda item number 9, discussion and vote on whether to approve the licensing agreement between the Town of Freetown and American Tower Asset Sub 2 LLC for the Berkeley Tower facility. So this is one of 2 towers that we have to go after in order to fix our communications issues. Right now, our police, fire, highway department have terrible communications in certain parts of town, which is scary and nothing that we want to see happen. So we had a study done, and basically we have to erect some equipment and 2 different towers, one on the east side of town, and then one that's actually, I believe it's in Berkeley, but it will help eliminate the problem. We know we have a tower here, but it'll communicate better. So it will, it based on everything that we've seen, will correct the issue everywhere in town due to elevation and everything.
Well, absolutely. One thing I always hear about from town folks is we have great fire, great police. This is another tool in their toolbox to be able to do their job even better. Being able to communicate across town and our low-lying areas is paramount. We keep growing, especially with the train coming. Hello, folks. We need to make sure we communicate with each other while they're doing their job. So this is a no-brainer.
So with that, I entertain a motion to approve the licensing agreement between the Town of Freetown and American Tower Asset Sub 2 LLC for the Berkeley Tower facilities.
Motion made.
I will second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Selectman Lopes,
Yes.
Selectman Zager,
Yes. And item number 10, discussion and vote on whether to approve the lease agreement between the Town of Freetown and Industrial Tower Wireless LLC for the Braley Road Tower facility. So basically, this is what I was just talking about. This is the second tower, separate lease agreement that will help correct some of the the dead space on the east side of town. So once again, very straightforward and easy. And happy to see this all come to fruition.
Absolutely. It's been started a little whiles back. I'm glad to see that we're getting stuff up. So it's
Yeah.
a great day.
So with that, I will entertain a motion to approve the lease agreement between the town of Freetown and Industrial Tower and Wireless LLC for the Braley Road Tower facilities.
Motion made.
I will second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Selectman Lopes?
Yes.
Selectman Zager?
Yes. Agenda item number 11. I promise, folks, we're almost there. Discussion and vote on whether to approve the ambulance abatements and write-offs for August 2023 in the amount of $112,964.69. So with that, I will entertain a motion to approve the ambulance abatements and write-offs for August 2023 in the amount of $112,964.69.
Motion made.
I will second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Selectman Lopes?
Yes.
Selectman Zager?
Yes. All right. So the next one, agenda number 12, is a thank you for the donation of time and skills of Robert Kelleher from Thermal Mechanical Systems for his assistance with the HVAC systems at the police station. So thank you, Mr. Kelleher. Really appreciate your help and knowledge.
Thank you.
All right. Discussion on representation of the school capital committee. Yeah.
We don't have any representation on that committee. They sent over something last week. I think they have a meeting on the 27th. So I didn't know if one of the selectmen wanted to be on that school capital committee, if you wanted to open that up to some other designee, but we definitely should have somebody that is involved so that we know what they're, how they're working and moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, it really, I don't have a say. Obviously we need to have a say, but who? I'm not really opposed to any ideas. So if you have anything.
No, having one of us there is definitely the right way to go. Make sure that Freetown's interests are represented at the school district, and they work well with us. So it's not saying that they're not, but we should definitely have a voice. At least get a feeling of what they're trying to. If they're building something, purchasing something, we can know what's going on with the school district. As far as one of us, I don't think we could appoint Trevor without him being here. I guess we could. We wouldn't have a choice in the matter. But him having a child, probably not the kindest thing to do.
I could add to that. It's really a long-term planning kind of thing they're trying to do, try to get ahead of capital needs. But you absolutely should be on the committee.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, do you is that something you want to do? What do you want to do? I mean,
I don't have a problem jumping on it.
Yeah.
Unless you truly want to do it.
no, I'm not opposed to anything or to passing it out to someone we know that's, in the public, but it's tough to appoint someone without them being here, asking for it. So, all right. So how do I do that? Because I don't have a second vote here and he can't vote for himself. So I think I'm actually going to have to push it now that I think about it. I'm going to have to push it because you can't appoint yourself. So
Those damn ethics.
I think you can go to the meeting at least and
Yeah.
at least start to hear what they're about and then come back and maybe you want to say, look, maybe we put it out for a couple of people. I don't know the demographics of the committee and how it's made up and how many positions that Freetown might have. But
Sure.
I just think somebody needs to be on there that at least can bring information back.
We'll put it, push it to a future meeting, and then I'll go to the next meeting with the school, with the capital committee, and then we'll take it from there.
good for me. Thank you.
No problem.
All right. So agenda item number 14, discussion and vote on whether to approve the agreement between the town of Freetown and the University of Massachusetts Dartmouth for influenza and COVID-19 vaccination service clinic. So this is something we've done in the past, and it's a no-brainer. They'll help us with everything as far as all the thoughts and everything, right? In conjunction with the Board of Health. So I don't have a problem with that.
No, I don't have a problem with it either. It's, from what I understand, it's just like the flu these days. So if we can have somebody to help us out, especially the Board of Health, it's a win-win for the residents in town.
All right, so with that, I will entertain a motion to approve the agreement between the town of Freetown and University of Massachusetts Dartmouth for the influenza and COVID-19 vaccination and service clinic.
Motion made.
I will second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Selectman Lopes?
Yes.
Selectman Zager?
Yes. And item number 15, discussion and vote on whether to vote and approve an additional $35,000 to complete for a water meter install project for the Bristol County ARPA funds. So, we put quite a bit of money out there for these, but putting new water meters in everyone's houses in and around town and businesses, which improves the accuracy as well as the efficiency for the water department. And it looks like they might have run a little short, so the ARPA funds is money that's been given to us back a while ago. So, and it was something that was an approved use for the money. So, I don't have a problem with it. I want to see the project through and get it done.
Yeah, I hear great thing about the projects, and I think using federal and state funds for this is the way to go. Absolutely.
So with that, I will entertain a motion to approve an additional $35,000 to complete for a water meter installation project for Bristol County ARPA.
Motion made.
I will second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Selectman Lopes?
Yes.
Selectman Zager?
Yes.
We do have a request from people on Zoom for anyone speaking to speak louder.
That's your third request for today. I promise to speak louder.
Yeah, listen. I can't get it any closer now. I apologize to everyone at home. Agenda item number 16. Discussion and vote on whether to approve the town administrator to sign amended contract with Bay State Wind Supply for water meter projects. So,
This is the amendment that I'm gonna need to make to pay them the additional funds to finish the project.
pretty straightforward there. So, with that, I entertain a motion to approve the town administrator to sign amended contracts with Bay State Wind Supply for the water meter project.
Motion made.
I will second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Selectman Lopes?
Yes.
Selectman Zager?
Yes. All right, lastly, agenda item number 17. I'm actually going to push because I believe this is something that we can speak with these fine folks that are here with us this evening, which is discussion on how to mitigate traffic direction issues on Forge Road. So we're going to move on to agenda item number 18. An update on the commuter rail projects, safety presentation from the MBTA, South Coast Rail questions and answering opportunities. So we have, it looks like 5 people here tonight from the MBTA. I will have each one of them introduce themselves, and to let everyone know, what we'll do is we ask that if you have any questions for them once we get to that part of this, there's some seating over there. There's a seat over there. If everyone can go up there one at a time, just state your name and let us know. We will try and respectfully limit everyone to about 3 or so minutes. That way we can allow everyone to flow through, and we'll be out of here before midnight so people can get home. So, we're going to start this off with the presentation. So, I thank you guys for showing up.
We can start with introductions first, and I'll start here on my left.
My name's Thaddeus Soltis. I work for MBTA Safety. I'm the lead investigator for fire life safety.
You're not hearing well. My ears are blocked. I feel like I just got off a plane. I don't know what's going on. That's Thad. He's with MBTA Safety, and I'm Jean Fox. I'm the Director of Community Engagement for the South Coast Rail Project.
Holly Palmgren, I'm a Senior Project Manager for the South Coast Rail.
Jim Healy, Director of Transportation for Railroad Operations, MBTA.
Joe. Well, say who you are. Thank you, Joe. So we're going to give you a brief update on where we are with the project and what some of our safety protocols are and what they will be going forward. When we get to certain sections, I may have some other people speak up, but then at the end, we're going to have a Q&A, a very robust Q&A, I imagine, and that's why I brought some subject area experts with me today. So with that, Joe, if you wouldn't mind advancing it, thank you. Again, it'll be an overview of the overall project. We have some nice photos in here. I'll also be discussing our South Coast Rail Safety First program, which is our safety outreach program to go into schools, senior centers, town halls, city halls. We have a number of materials that we have already circulated and will continue to circulate relative to safety along the railroad tracks. So basic information like, can I take a walk along the railroad tracks? The answer is no. It's state property, you're trespassing, and it's extremely dangerous. Things like that will be in the materials. And they're in 5 different languages as well. We're going to talk about grade crossings. We understand that's been an issue here with a number of out-of-service grade crossings due to construction. We're going to talk about how that's handled now and how it's going to be handled going forward. We have a noise mitigation program. Identified dwellings that had severe impacts were addressed and approached. And I think we have in the 90s percent participation on the part of Freetown residents in that program, which offers a monetary bit of money depending on the extent of the impact for windows, doors, mini splits, or even just greenery to abate noise at your home. I'll go over a little bit about what the community outreach effort is, and then again we will have a Q&A session at the end. So thank you all for being here. We really appreciate your interest in the project and asking us the questions. The Fall River line is if you look at the map, it's the left leg, it's the shorter leg, and it includes the Fall River Depot and the Freetown station. And it's substantially complete and has been for quite some time. So it's those 2 stations and a layover facility at Weaver's Cove. The Middleborough, New Bedford, and Signals contract, the larger one that was $403.5 million, is in the 85 to 90% completion range in terms of construction. There's still quite a bit of signal work we're doing, but construction-wise, if you drive by the 2 New Bedford stations or Middleborough station, you will see that they look like they're almost ready to rock and roll. Off-site traffic mitigation is things that we were required to do per our certificate to enhance accessibility in and around stations. It can include intersections, signals, crosswalks. Middleborough, we have a Hawk system, so it's an overhead lighting system to get people safely across Route 28. So a number of those projects are underway, and that's at about 67. They're finishing up in Fall River now, and we'll be heading over to New Bedford shortly. And the Ped Bridge is a separate contract, just awarded last May, or just began working last May, awarded in March. That's a $21 million contract that's in the 13%. There's 2 abutments. You can see the beginning of a bridge coming, but that's going to be a tight arch bridge that spans Route 18 and Acushnet Avenue in New Bedford from Purchase Street to almost the platform of the New Bedford station, which is where the C Street ferry parking is. So here's my map. So if you look, that little left-hand jog, that's the Fall River secondary line. It shows you the 2 stations, the Freetown station and the depot. And then we have the East Taunton station, which is right there at the interchange of 140 and Route 24, currently under construction. But we have a dedicated ramp ultimately that goes into our station in East Taunton. The Middleborough station is about 5/8 of a mile from where the existing Lakeville station is. The reason for moving that station was to avoid a reverse move. The way the tracks are aligned, if we had left the station for this project in Lakeville, the train would have had to back into that station, stop for anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes to do a brake check, and then proceed to Boston. That didn't make any sense. Then we have Church Street, and we have New Bedford stations, as well as the Wamsutta layover. The Wamsutta layover is directly next to the New Bedford station. The Weaver's Cove layover on the Fall River side is a little bit farther down the road. That's just the way the geography landed. So again, here are the major contracts. The first one, the $159 million to Skanska DW White for Fall River Secondary, is largely complete. There's still safety certification going on. There will be additional testing and commissioning going on, and some signal work. Middleborough Secondary, New Bedford and Systems is to South Coast Rail Constructors for $403.5 million. Offsite traffic is 8.5. That's to Newport Construction. And then Barletta Heavy Division is doing the Ped Bridge in New Bedford. So work on the secondary line, as we said, is complete. That's the leg that goes between the Freetown and Fall River, includes the Freetown and the Fall River stations and Weaver's Cove. And just so people understand why they're named what they're named, you can't use anything but the actual legal entity. So we can't call it a sonnet. We can't call it West Freetown. It has to be Freetown Station. The signal communication, the positive train control, that federal mandate for train safety so trains don't crash into each other, those are all being installed now. So I will say that PTC came out of accidents that happened across the country, and you can add to this later, Jim, I'm sure, where a train, say, example, a freight train broke loose and then careened down the tracks and hit another train. Transponders are now on these trains so that they can signal each other, and that avoids any kind of, or most incidents of any kind of collision. So that's going in now, and it still has to be tested and commissioned. We need to make sure everything is operating properly and safely. And the stations on the Fall River line will open when the safety system and the operator training, about 100 people have to be trained. When that's complete, and when MBTA railroad operations, Jim and his team, the Federal Railroad Administration, and even Keolis have given their approvals and say we are safe and ready to go. I wanted to show you from schematic to final. That was what we had on the left, the schematic view of the Freetown Station, which is a side platform, 100-foot high-level platform with ramps and stairs, bike shelter, EV charging stations. It has about, I think, 104 parking places with rooms for expansion if necessary. We do suspect some North Fall River people will want to use this station, but it looks really good. And we just cut the grass finally, so it looks a lot better now. And then at the bottom, you can see the bike shelter, what it looked schematically to what it looks like today. So operations and safety. Every right-of-way grade crossing in Freetown will have safety gates, lights, and enhanced markings, such as reflectors and striping. And these enhanced markings are actually a new piece of the pie. There were a couple of accidents elsewhere in the Commonwealth where MBTA got involved to figure out what could we do to make these crossings stand out more for drivers. So there'll be reflectors on the side, they're behind right lines, additional striping, and somewhere we have a picture of that, but it's not in this presentation. Darn. But it will, all of them will have that at some point. They were not part of the original scope. This is a new thing on the part of the MBTA to enhance grade crossing safety. You'll see blue signs at every crossing, and they have a number. So if you, for example, see any kind of problem as you're going through a grade crossing, or you yourself experience a problem in a grade crossing, that is the best number to call. It's an identifier, it's a central dispatch. It can stop trains if they're traveling. It can get the right people to you. Chief, you know that, and both chiefs are aware of this. So we know that these signs are very important. I wish they were giant. They're not, but they are prominently posted. Please pay attention to those. They're very helpful if there's any kind of incident in or around a grade crossing. Grade crossing safety equipment will be activated when MBTA and Keolis begin testing the train, and we'll notify everybody in advance. But I will say that we just had a meeting last week with Mass Coastal, and all but one of the current crossings should be fully signalized now. If it didn't happen, it's going to be very shortly. The exception to that is Richmond Forge, where there's a lot of work going on right now. They're putting medians in. They're going to do the one-way signs again. There's a ton of work going on there right now, signal work, road work, everything. So we just had a weekend outage. They're working through the week. There'll be another weekend outage to complete that work. So those signals won't be operational. And I will put in the following caveat. Where testing and commissioning is ongoing, there may be times when an existing signal system will be taken out of service to make sure it's working, or to continue fixing it or working at any kinks that are in the system. But for now, we've been assured that the crossings in Freetown should be fully signalized, not necessarily gated. Not all the gates will be in right away, but they are coming. Horns at grade crossings are a universal safety element. They're essential. They're required by the Federal Railroad Administration, and the MBTA strongly supports the use of these. Yes, you can apply for a quiet zone. If you prefer, as a municipality, to go for a quiet zone, you have to get clearance from the FRA, the Federal Railroad Administration. And if you decide to do that, you have to understand that there will have to be upgrades to every grade crossing, and they will be at the expense of the municipality who is requesting them. and the municipality assumes all liability. It's the only way not to have a train horn sound. We do know they save lives, and they save lives across the country. And when there are not quiet zones, it's where there are quiet zones, frequently it's farther out or in a densely populated area. And if they don't maintain those quiet zones in these densely populated areas, I believe you cited Chelsea, then they get pulled and the horn starts sounding. Anyway, so just pointing that out. Ever since I started with this 100 years ago, I've asked about the horns, and I have been assured by just about every subject matter expert that they are essential for safety and well-being. So our Safety First program was actually developed by the South Coast Rail Outreach Team. And we want to have everyone alerted to when we start up testing. So trains here, freight trains run usually around 10 miles per hour. There are sections of the Fall River secondary line where open areas where they can go up to 25 miles per hour. The reason being that we've upgraded the track that those heavier trains can operate safely at a higher speed. They never go through a grade crossing at that speed because we don't have all the lights and gates, but they wouldn't anyway. But when we do start testing trains here, there are areas where they could be going up to 80 miles an hour. It's going to be like it's real commuter rail service. And that's to make sure that these trains are ready for operation, that the signal systems are working, and then we have people trained the proper way to operate those trains. So next slide, Joe, thanks. And again, we have a regional safety program that we've launched. I have brochures up to yin yang I'm happy to share. We've done some theme messaging. If you're on our outreach email list, then you're getting these. We did one on school buses. We're doing ones directed to parents and teachers, helping them with the children and reminding them of the dangers of being in the right of way and near the tracks. We also meet, and several people here today meet at our regular fire life safety meetings. These are with regional first responders and public safety officials to talk about safety along the right of way and what it would take, for example, if there were an accident on the tracks, what would it take to get people safely off the tracks and correct the situation and get traffic moving again. So we're going to have Thad speak briefly to the drill in just a second, but we do request that if you want a presentation on safety first, just contact us at our email address, southcoastrail@dot.ma.us. Just as an update, here are the crossings in the town of Freetown. If you remember, Elm High and Copacut were early action crossings that we did. So they were done before we came in to do all this, although they did need upgrades. They all have the gates. Beechwood, the signal of Beechwood is operational. Richmond North, that's the one that's not. Richmond Forge is not yet. Forge South is not yet, but will be. And then Chase and Braley and Chipaway, the team said today they need to do some other analysis at Chipaway over there. So, but they're absolutely working through all these crossings to get them up and running as soon as possible for everyone's safety. But remember, the testing for the railroad signal system for the entire South Coast Rail project is going along the right of way and at the crossing. During this work, signals could be disabled. Even once they're operational again, you could see some going out of service. But there are flaggers that get off the train, stop the traffic. The train stops before it enters the crossing. The flagger gets off, stop traffic, flagger gets back on, train proceeds through very slowly. And then in September this month and into the fall, crews are going to be also clearing vegetation. So we have state and federal mandates regarding vegetative clearing on the right of way. And the reason for that is not just that we want a big right of way, but you don't want a tree limb falling onto the tracks. So you have a mandated amount of clearing that has to happen. And we did that several years ago, but it grew back in many places. And I heard from Kenny Resendiz at the bus company that they can't even see some of them. So we're fixing that. Very soon we're going Lakeville, Berkeley, Freetown. Or is it the other way? Next week, Freetown. Okay. But that's for line of sight, not just for the trains, but for vehicles. And with this, I'm going to turn it over to Thad to talk about what we did on July 27th.
Good evening. July 27th, we had our first emergency training drill with the fire department, all first responders, both here in Freetown and the mutual aid partners. The training went very well. There was a lot learned. Chief Ashley and Chief Froze, both of them, their departments worked well. Rest assured, residents of Freetown, you've got two great departments, safety and public safety. They did a great job. They learned a lot. I know it's been a while since these type of commuter service has been through this area. But again, we have large vehicles. It was great to see that they went out and everybody took an interest in learning what to do. When we did this, there was a lot of questions, rightly so. I come from a fire service background, and I basically had the same questions as Chief Ashley and Chief Rose did. How do we access these vehicles? How do we shut them down in the time of need? God forbid something happen. How do we get people out of these vehicles, or if anybody was hit at the grade crossing? So it was a great learning experience. When we did this, they learned how to, the fire department went in along with the police department and all the other emergency responders that participated. How to get people off our equipment, how to shut everything down, how to communicate. And I applaud you for improving the communications for these two departments, because communication plays a big part. If you can't speak to anybody, you're dispatching or to each other, it complicates the process. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
Doing that. But again, just testing capabilities. Let me just give a quick list of what we had. So the capabilities that were tested under critical transportation, the railroad understood shortcomings, or anything that might have been an issue with this. On-scene security with law enforcement, public health and EMS, fire EMS departments learned a lot from that. Operations coordination, as well as fire, police, and law enforcement, and search and rescue operations, with the fire department, and fire management and suppression, again, the fire department. And everybody learned a lot. Everybody did a great job. Chief Ashley did a great job in coordinating the incident as the incident commander. Again, and also other things that were learned from this: vehicle extrication, mass casualty response, fire suppression, and mass evacuation. So basically everything went well. There were any questions that were brought up were hopefully answered. And again, it's a learning process. So again, hopefully, God forbid, nothing happens. But I will say they are prepared. Again, Freetown with this mutual aid partner. So everything, the drill went well. I can't see any complaints. And then we're going to be doing again in November on New Bedford on that part of the line. So, but again, everybody works together well, and everybody worked very well that day. And you have, again, rest assured, you've got a great public safety.
Hottest day of the year.
Mhm.
And they were in all that gear. And they did it.
You can pick the date, but you just can't pick the weather.
We picked the worst day. It was so hot, and they had all that gear, and they still did it. So the scenario, just so you know, you see the vehicle there. That was in theory was a vehicle hit, and they had to extricate a victim. There was a small fire on one of the coaches, and then the coaches were loaded with volunteer victims with various sets of circumstances. So some were very serious, right?
Yes.
Some were ambulatory, some weren't. Chief Ashley, you can speak to this too. I think one of the biggest hurdles that they had getting people off was the giant step between the last step on the coach down to where the ballast and ties were. And then we found the striker chair that goes to evacuate people off a car didn't fit in the new coaches. So plan B on that. But we learned something also, and we continue to learn from this experience. And again, the next one won't be the hottest day of the year. It'll be November, but we hope to have all of the public safety first responder folks much more comfortable with dealing with a rail accident when we haven't had commuter rail trains down here in over 60 years. So it's not the same as a freight accident. We have those occasionally. We have a freight derailment. We had one a few years ago in Fall River. Diesel spill had to be contained, but no passengers, and nobody was injured. it was a derailment because the train hit a log. So these things happen. Thank you for that, Thad. Thad was a big organizer on that too. Good, because I didn't know what I was doing, but boy, they did. And so did Chief Rose and Chief Ashley, so thank you. So evening freight operations, while we're in the midst of construction season, we have had the freight trains running in the evenings. You've probably heard the horns, I know I have. That's just to keep them out of the way so they can get this construction work done. There haven't been any issues. We did this last season as well. By December-ish, we typically stop that, because the construction season will be done. So we have a good relationship with the freight operator on the New Bedford line and the Fall River line. They operate sporadically here a couple of days a week. That's Mass Coastal Railroad. CSX operates on the Middleborough line, and they do 5-day-a-week operations, so they don't fall into this. In fact, for the de-stressing, I think we had to work around CSX because they were running trains, so de-stressing is getting that track ready tempered, so it can handle temperature extremes. And noise mitigation, I mentioned earlier, 94%. I couldn't remember the percentage, but of the number of eligible properties, 94% have accepted the offer and are working with the team to get bids to do whatever it is they want to do: windows, doors, mini splits, vegetation. We're also working with Serped, updating our priority development and priority protection plan document that we did originally back for the corridor plan. And when we did technical assistance, for those of you who have been around for a while, gave small pots of money to all the communities in the corridor, it was based on that plan. We went to each community and say, where do you think development belongs? Where do you think preservation belongs? And then Serped, because they're the regional entity, brought all that together, and that was elevated to the state level. This is the third go around on this effort. And they've already been to Freetown. So I know there'll be more to come. And they also talk with several other state agencies to make sure that everything syncs up nicely. And community outreach. We have our website and email, which we welcome you to use. Many people do. We meet with people whenever they ask us to. It doesn't have to be a huge group. It can be a smaller group, or it can be multi-jurisdictional group. We really meet with chambers of commerce. We meet with universities and colleges, businesses. So we'll do site visits with businesses that have questions. We've done many, many of those. We've got one coming up this week. We do weekly updates. Those updates are sent via email, and they tell you where, when, and what is being done, and they're broken out by community. So you can go right to Freetown and see what's happening in your town. You don't have to read about what's happening elsewhere if you're not interested, or if you're not going to be traveling through those communities. We have 5,700 subscribers. When I started, we had about 2,000, so people are signing up. I think we're there for Q&A. So thank you, Joe, for driving. I appreciate that. So we welcome questions now. I brought a number of people with me to help address some of your questions and concerns, but I do hope that the presentation was enlightening for people who were not current on where we are.
Thank you. All right. So if everyone, I think everyone was in here, but just in case, make sure that you state your name before you state your, have your questions, and we're going to try and keep everyone's questions to around 3 minutes. I will ask a question first because it was on our agenda.
Yes.
So, and it actually kind of relates to one of my questions. Mitigating traffic control as far as Forge Road. So we've had a couple of complaints because, we had the one way in one direction. We changed it, which made sense. But now what's happened is we've had some complaints of some local residents that people are coming up the street the one way, realizing now that they're at a one way and having to use other people's driveways to turn around because they've made it technically onto the one way. So, we're looking for your input, advice, what you think you can do to help us, control that. My initial thought, obviously, is signage. Do you have signage
Yes.
that we can use, that we can erect over there?
So we will, and I also have seen that happen. I've seen cars go down and turn around on people's lawns.
Yeah.
I've witnessed it several times in utter horror that, and some of them are Amazon trucks, frankly. that they don't pay attention, or some people just get up there and see the big red sign. So yes, we have vetted and had approved new signage that we hope to have installed while all this work at Richmond and Forge is going on. The original one-way was approved by the town and everybody else, but when it was put into play, it didn't work.
Yeah.
It didn't work because you had to sneak up and inch yourself onto the tracks, very unsafe, before you can negotiate the turn. So it has to be the other way. We're adding additional signage, and hopefully that will help. I've seen it.
And we'll hope, right? I mean, we've put plenty of signage up in
I
other
know.
places around town, and it really hasn't corrected some issues. But I think signage is a good first step.
Agreed.
One of my other questions, Gene, is actually Forge Road itself. So as a resident of Assonet and, you know, 2 school-age daughters, I tend to drive myself back and forth to the schools a lot. And coming up Forge Road, going towards the schools is not an issue to see the railroad tracks. What I worry about, and I'm glad to hear that you're going to put gates over there, because I haven't seen the mechanisms there to put the gates up. So I got nervous that the gates weren't going to be at that crossing. But that's a 90-degree blind turn. So I almost wonder if would we be able to put the gates up before the 90-degree turn in order to stop people before they come around the corner at a too fast of a speed and unable to stop themselves as a train's approaching.
So I'm actually going to defer to Jim on this because I think that there's a standard. We had to get all our grade crossings
Well, all the grade
approved.
crossings are approved by
DPA, so we don't have any say on that, but I do think the additional striping and the reflectors should help. I know exactly what you're talking about. People can take that corner way too fast. Happens on Brayley too. No, this is the other.
the other
Medians are going
direction.
at
Okay.
Richmond. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jim.
With respect to 49 CFR 234, which would be the grade crossing standards for the Federal Railroad Administration, the active warning devices cannot be located away from the apron of the crossing. So they have to be in a specific zone for there. One thing you could do if you wanted to look at that would be to look at the manual for the Universal Control of Traffic Devices, which is by the FHWA. They have an entire grade crossing manual that shows how signage, pavement markings, delineators, visibility triangle, and everything should be set up for all different types of crossings. And it specifically deals with roads. Now, most of that is the responsibility of the township. It does not fall to the railroad. The railroad is required for the signage and the active warning devices on their right-of-way. Everything prior to that all falls to either the Commonwealth, the state, or the township.
What was the name of that document?
That's interesting. Yeah.
Manual
It's a nice
for the
way to put it.
universal
You're trained, but we got to pay for it. Okay.
traffic control devices.
So I guess we're sitting over here saying, and I'm not trying to be harsh, but we weren't given a choice with the train, right? So the train is coming through town. Like it, love it, hate it, whatever. I'm not saying in either direction. But now we're being told we're going to have to spend additional funding in order to create safety protocols.
But that crossing hasn't been done yet, so the
Yeah.
warning devices,
No,
the
but I guess
striping,
what,
the medians, all of the stuff that is going to go in as part of what was designed and approved
Mhm.
isn't there yet.
Yeah, okay, yeah,
right?
no, and I
So-
understand
so
that, but I'm
once
just saying,
that's up, it
yeah.
may create a completely different
Mhm.
environment than what you're seeing
and let's
now.
hope that, right? But I
Right.
guess I was
So-
just falling back on what he's saying was, well, if it's what we do isn't enough, it's on you.
Right.
You know, and that's just not a,
I think he was
Not a
just
welcoming
suggesting that there may be other things. Like I know the town has done some striping near other railroad in the past. This is going back a ways because I've been around a while. That wasn't necessarily MBTA approved. It was just striping. It was a stencil, and they did it because I can't even remember where it was. I want to say it was on High Street, though. Part of me wants to say that because that grade crossing at one point was in such disrepair that people were hitting it too fast and damaging vehicles. So the town went in and did stuff. If in that manual there's something simple that adds to what we're doing, I think that's all what was intended, and it shouldn't be a big thing. We're doing, like I said, like Holly said, a lot of additional the reflectors, the striping, there's all, even the little in the ground reflectors are going in. So for around the curve, you should see those faster. it is, we have to remember too that we as drivers have some responsibility. We should be paying attention. And when you have change like this, it takes acclimation. It doesn't happen overnight. And just try to work with it. And if we find a problem, we have to address it.
And then,
Before it's one way,
Yeah.
when it got changed, we did put signs up, but obviously
Not enough.
not
heard
enough,
the
yeah.
complaints, and now we're looking to, so I think we sort of need to wait and see what gets put up, because I do think it's going to make a big difference. Because right now
It's
you
a
don't
big
have
curve.
those out there.
I hope. I'm
I
usually
hear
a
ya.
glass half full kind of guy, so I hope for safety. I'm always worried, right? So, and then one other quick question, then I'll let it get
Sure.
over
Well, I
to
have
the
a couple
residents. Oh, I'm
questions.
sorry.
Yeah,
And
Brian.
I'm sorry.
Sorry,
Selectman
Brian.
Lopes. So you guys talked about the training. How often will that training be done down the road? Because a one-time training is great, but there's always turnover in every department, unfortunately, across. So I was just curious, is that something that will be done yearly?
Well, unfortunately not. Due to the fact, the system itself, we have many towns and cities that we have to go to, and we give everybody a fair shake. So this year we were able to get here in Freetown and in New Bedford in November. Next year, like last year, we did in Lowell. Next year, I'm not sure what they have for next year, but they try to spread the wealth and the training so everybody gets a fair shake. So it may be a few years, before this happens again here. And I totally agree with turnover, retirements, people leaving for whatever reason. Get the training, but again, if there's anything that we can do to help in the meantime, Chief Ashley has my number. We try to get to him, get to you guys as soon as we can. But again, there's just so many municipalities within the system itself. We have to be fair to to spread the wealth with the training. Again, coming from the fire service, training is great, and the more you have, the more you know, the better off you are. But unfortunately, we're limited to what we can do.
We do annual trainings and we do invite other jurisdictions to attend. Am I correct, Jim?
I mean, you can come observe.
Yeah, you just may have to travel.
That's the thing. So you may have to travel. I will say, Chief Ashley came out to Braintree. We did that back in May, so May or June. But he came out and he observed, so that was great. And I thought he was out there, and he saw what was going on with that, and I think he was able to take that back along with the training that we had. There was fuel was provided, it was virtual and a hands-on, and he and many, just about the whole department went out there and got their, got their hands on it, got to touch the equipment and look at it. But again, that's just we, in the future we will invite anybody that wants to go out if they don't mind traveling. Usually, they're generally on Sundays. We had this one on Thursday, but majority of the trainings are on Sundays. Why, I'm not sure, but that's what they do. But it is available, so there's nothing that is prohibiting anybody from not participating in that or at least observing.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. So I'm Carlos Lopes. First and foremost, thank you for all coming out here this evening on a nice, beautiful Freetown day. Nice and dry out there, from what I understand. And thank you for the presentation. You actually answered quite a few of my questions that I had from our residents, but there are a couple more that I would like to go through. I try to write them down as you were speaking. You spoke very fast, but I couldn't write fast, so no worries. So first and foremost, you're here to train. We have a lot of questions, and let's get with the simplest one. What's the schedule going to look like? Once when you're up and running, full 80 miles per hour, which I'll get to that in a second. What's the schedule?
It was modeled on the existing service that goes out of Lakeville right now, that Middleborough line, which is 24 trips a day.
Each way or total? 12 and 12?
Total trip, 24 trips a day. We are adding 2 train sets, so there will be 26 trips a day. The trains come down to Totley, and then they split. Half of those will go down to Freetown and Fall River, and half will head for New Bedford. So, based on that model, that's 3 peak period morning, 3 peak period PM night, and 1 or 2 during the day. Railroad operations will finalize that schedule. Everything has to fit nicely at South Station, which, as many of you know, is kind of jammed. But basically, this is an extension of what already exists on the Middleborough line.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. Well, we've heard, little rumblings of how many trips there were, and thank you for answering that question. Now, when's this supposed to begin? We're getting, from speaking to you folks and going to your website that's up there, we're hearing the fall. That fall is pretty broad. Do you have a time and date when this is going to
No,
begin?
it's definitely not fall.
Perfect.
Here's the deal, and I think I alluded to this in the presentation. The testing and commissioning piece is the biggest piece of this now. Once we get this construction done, this corridor has to run flawlessly. Many of you will recall that the MBTA was under fire by FTA for some safety violations, primarily related to the subway system, but they had a number of, and Jim, you can speak to this better than I, but they had a number of issues that had to be addressed, corrective actions that had to be implemented, and reports that had to be generated. It is of utmost importance that when South Coast Rail runs, it runs flawlessly, perfectly, and safely. That's the priority. So if the testing and commissioning extends out a few months, I'm totally fine with that. And forgive me if I didn't get it running when I initially thought it would be. To me, that's more important than anything. And I know that there are many organizations, so it's not just railroad operations and MBTA safety and the project, but FRA has to put their stamp of approval on everything we do, and we have to train 100 people. And with that, I'm going to ask you, Jim, to speak to that. You know more about the railroad operations piece.
So first off, what Gene said is with regards to the FRA, okay, they have an entire New Start program that they go through. There's 175 different items on their checklist that have to be accounted for. So railroad operations would not even be able to entertain accepting the property until that New Start checklist was complete. So the feds signed off on it first, at which point then railroad operations would come down, again, review the property. If everything on the punch list was satisfactory, then MBTA railroad operations would accept the property, at which time testing and commissioning would begin. So train sets would be moved down, crews have to be qualified. So you would see an increase in train traffic of commuter trains operating in non-revenue status to qualify people. So that means they're operating normally, but in non-revenue status. They are not carrying passengers. Once we complete the qualification process of our crews and our equipment, then we would start revenue service. What day that is, sir, I cannot give that.
Do a ballpark. Are we talking springtime, summer next year? Trying to get everyone prepared. As you know, people have lived here many years.
It depends on how construction goes.
Okay.
It also depends on our existing conversations with the contractor, because we're trying to get them to squeeze out as much as they can without sacrificing the safety and efficiency we're looking for. So we're still working with them, but we should have very soon a date that we feel comfortable with, and we will be sharing that far and wide, I assure you.
We appreciate that.
I just don't have it today because there have been 4 of them that's been in front of me, and I'm not putting 4 dates out here and then having to come back and say, never mind. I want to know with a fair level of confidence that what I put out publicly is accurate. But I will say, and Jim made a good point, it's a process. And sometimes it goes flawlessly, and every box gets checked and everything moves, but it's the wild card on the table. We made it through COVID. We made it through supply chain. We got this construction done, I think, miraculously. This is a good news story in terms of a construction project. I know highway projects don't always run that way, Mr. But we did really well when you consider what we had to confront to get this work done. It was very, very challenging, but we did it. That said, this next part, as we wrap up construction and really enter in earnest the testing and commissioning portion of this project, very important, but very difficult to nail down.
Thank you. Well,
if I may,
sure.
What Jim and Gene said, safety above service. So we want to make sure everything is safe in all aspects before we start revenue service with moving the trains.
100% agree with you, and that's really why we asked you to come here and speak to us, because we have residents, both Zoom and here, that are concerned about this train, right? A lot of us have been driving here for many generations, and you're right. Some responsibilities on the drivers, there's also some responsibility on the MBTA service as well, right? It has to be, we have to work together, not just one person telling the other whatever they want to hear. So continue on, Mike. So I thank you for that. And I do appreciate, I'm sure others appreciate, that there's rigorous testing being done to make sure that they are safe. I certainly do. So thank you as a resident of this town. Now, we do have 11 crossings and a sonnet, right, in this part of town. 11 crossings, a train doing 80 miles an hour, a lot of horns going off. As you can imagine, we have quite a few people that get upset from both noise and safety. I've heard it multiple times. Every railroad crossing will have lights, signals, and all the bells and whistles prior to you folks starting this up at 80 miles per hour.
Absolutely.
Can I get a guarantee from
You
you?
have a guarantee.
Oh,
We
yes.
Thank
can't
you.
operate the trains without that.
I appreciate
It won't
that.
be allowed.
I'm not, again, communication is key, and I think I'm very vocal and make sure they get the information that I get that we can share. Thank you. That's you. That's very important for us to hear. So, folks, we will have these to be determined. All right. I know construction schedules are. We do construction here in town, and sometimes they go on times. Other times, we wait. So, thank you for that. All right. Horns. So horns is one of the things we did get quite a bit. 11. So is it going to be blowing a horn every single 11 stops times 3 horns every single time?
There's a specific cadence that will be
Sure.
sounded. It's 2 longs, a short, and a long.
Okay.
At 79 miles an hour, that'll start approximately 26 seconds prior to reaching the apron of the crossing, and will continue through all subsequent crossings until you are clear.
Any way we can pull up that map that was up there? Those crossings are pretty tightly together. And can we get one horn?
No.
Because it'll last the whole time. By the time you cross all 11, mathematically it should be all done.
10.
And as far as the quiet zone mitigation program you spoke of, obviously safety is number one thing. Again, we've spoke to that in depth tonight. Now, can we have quiet zones at nighttime? People go to bed. Is there a mechanism that we can not have like horns during the day, but at nighttime when people are trying to fall asleep, put babies down or take a nap? They're quite loud, as you know, folks that are here.
I've worked in the railroad industry for over 25 years.
Thank you for your service.
So, locomotive horn rule has been in place for easily since the early 1970s. Okay, Part 222 states that you will sound a specific cadence prior to and occupying a grade crossing. Our operating rules, which is called NORAC, okay, the Northeast Operating Rules Advisory Committee, has Rule 19B, which states you will sound 2 longs, a short, and a long prior to and occupying any grade crossing. Quiet zones. Okay, with respect to Part 234 again, you have all the rights in the world to apply for a quiet zone. I can tell you from my experience at the FRA, it's about a 2 to 3 year lead time. You're going to spend anywhere between $600,000 and $1 million a crossing. Okay,
Per crossing?
per crossing.
Yes. Lakeville looked at it.
Boy, the FRA has it pretty set up. That's crazy.
Well, that's not the money that goes to the FRA. It's
Oh, I know. But as far as setting the
No,
pricing to
to
fix
the
the crossings and
FRA,
everything
but-
else, it's
But for the upgrades that are required,
sure. What kind of
that's
upgrades are we
what's
talking about,
gonna
Jim?
cost you.
Are we talking about raising, putting more guards up? Like, what kind of upgrades are we speaking of?
Quad
Just more
gates.
visual awareness?
quad gates, delineators, advanced pavement markings, advanced signage. There's traffic light interlocks if you have traffic light control anywhere around there. Chelsea went through it. Waltham went through it. Chelsea did, and then you have all the upkeep of that crossing equipment, okay, that's required and inspected every year. If you don't upkeep it properly, then like I said, the city of Chelsea will be the first to tell you. They received a letter and said your crossing, your quiet zone is gone. It is revoked. And immediately the MBTA started sounding horns going through the city of Chelsea. Horns are what protect your citizens. I know they are a detriment, as some people would say, because they run between 90 and 110 decibels. But the thing about it is, if you have somebody in their car that's blaring their music, okay, or not paying attention, or using an electronic device or whatever, that horn is what they're going to hear. Okay, there is not one engineer or conductor that wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to climb on board my equipment and kill somebody today.
No,
But
we don't want that at all.
you,
That's happened once in this town, and we don't want that to happen ever again. So, if we need horns, we need horns. It's just the amount of horns. It's a mathematical. To me, it's mathematical. You're going through the same stretch, seconds long. You know, I don't even think that person. I believe it's still the old. You pull it yourself, or is it automatic?
There's two different types now on the newer cars. They have what's called a sequencer, where he hits it or she hits it once, and it sounds the sequence continuously. Okay. The other thing is there is other implications with respect to horn usage when you get into PTC, which is positive train control. So unfortunately, you're going to hear the horns, and they are going to sound all hours of the day and night. There's no way around it, and there's nothing that we can do to mitigate that.
When's the last train? Do you know, Jim?
I'm sorry?
Did you know? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. What is the last scheduled train at night? You talking 11 o'clock, 10
I
o'clock?
don't know what time
We don't know
that'll
that?
be.
If we are talking, there may be one. I mean, landing in Fall River.
But that also means Mass Coastal still has to comply with the horn rules too. So if he's delivering to his consignees late at night, you'll hear his horns as well.
Yeah, that's what they're doing now, and I can't imagine having 20, 25 more of them. And they go throughout the night, and they don't stop at 11 o'clock. They go throughout the night.
That schedule still isn't final, so I
Sure.
don't really know.
All right.
Right now, Mass Coastal is sounding at night because that's when they're running.
Well, let's jump course a little bit. In that corridor, you spoke to the noise mitigation projects. You put it up there that 31 properties at 94%. Just curiosity, 31 out of how many? We're out of 100.
Any dwelling that's near the tracks was analyzed for noise impacts, severe noise impacts, and that's based on topography, distance from track. There's a number of variables in that black box. But then through that analysis, which is an FTA analysis that's used across the country, they identify the dwellings, and it's just dwellings, it's not businesses. Occasionally, I think there's one church in the mix that happens to be on track. Those that have severe impacts then are assigned a monetary value that is relative to the decibel level above the severe impact they are at.
And I believe you also did almost like a seismic study, or make sure the house wasn't trembling too much. Like vibrations, that's what the word. I couldn't think of it. Thank you.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of vibration math on track.
Oh,
too.
sure. And those 31 properties went through both assessments, and
Those were the 31 that, through the assessment along the entire corridor, qualified for mitigation.
and what happened to the others? What was the most common thing why they didn't qualify? No more reasons?
Only ones that came through. Everything that was along the corridor was included in the analysis.
Okay.
If the topography wasn't an issue, if ambient noise wasn't an issue, if distance from the tracks wasn't an issue, they were excluded. There's this red line that says here's where it is. Oh, sorry.
Any chance we can increase the amount of money? Because you're telling me we have 26 trains, 3 horns times how many?
Well, that
I'm
was
just
the
throwing it out there.
analysis
I'm
that
not
was
being
done.
really.
That is the
No.
Okay.
So it accounted for what the expected service was.
Okay,
which
thank
is
you,
that
thank you.
number.
That's where I was getting to. It was like,
the
Time of
26
day,
trips.
yeah.
Yep.
So that was the analysis.
now is the
And that-
program? Can they still go into the program if they choose to?
No.
So it's over. So no
It's
more.
pretty much over. If
okay.
someone, now there was one here in a sonnet
Mhm.
that approached us recently, I believe fairly new construction, and I was able to sort of grandfather that one in. But typically, they're wrapping up right now. Their contract is exhausted at the end of this year.
Okay. Well, I believe.
The analysis that was done. It
Yeah,
was,
we have it. We have an
Sure,
FAQ.
I would love to see it. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, and it goes through all the properties and then screens out why
Right.
the ones made it.
And it's just
Thank you, Holly.
severe. It's not any other impact, just severe.
One last question before I kick it off to the residents. We spoke to police and fire trainings, and I think they're a valuable asset to both the town and the MBTA. But one of the things we did when we spoke to our chiefs, there are things that came out of that training that I'm curious about. Specifically, equipment. Like a jaws of life type equipment. Is that something the MBTA may provide to the town, similar to we have the hazmat vehicle here in Freetown because we have a large industrial area? Is that something the MBTA can provide? The proper equipment, whether it's foam, stretchers, short of a helicopter, of course, to get people off the train. But is there a program in place that will provide police and fire with resources more than just training, like a physical equipment they can use and operate, get familiar with over time?
So it's my understanding that there was an earmark in the transportation bond bill, and it would be incumbent on the chiefs to get together with other chiefs and identify equipment that would be beneficial. I can't be involved in that. That has to be between the municipalities and Department of Transportation. But I know that that earmark was put in there for equipment needs.
Okay.
And I would suggest too, there are ways to get an appropriation. You can't get it out of the bond bill. And I would also suggest to you that there are a number of grants that FRA has, the Chrissy grants, for example, that help with equipment. There's one for law enforcement that allows for detail. So for example, new grade crossings, you might want to be able to deploy a detail so people know, oh, you're not supposed to go crashing through those, or, oh, they're coming down. That does mean stop. It's a learning curve that people have to go through. But there is a grant opportunity. And then finally, the reports that came out of this drill and that will come out of the one in New Bedford identify areas that our first responders and our chiefs have identified as lacking. And those are what you can go to your elected officials and say, we need this equipment. It's not in the South Coast Rail budget for sure. It's not in the MBTA budget for sure.
Not in the Freetown budget either.
And it's not in the Freetown budget. So, but we need, because the striker chair wouldn't fit down the aisle, we need this equipment for the ambulance, for example. Or we need some kind of, what's that thing Fall River had, that fancy ATV thing?
All-terrain vehicle?
It was, yeah, but it was a fancy ambulance-y one.
Oh.
Chief, do you remember what it, that's all it is? Okay. Well, okay, that was cool. Very good for the track. So this stuff that came out of the drill that's going to be documented that shows where they've identified a need.
No, absolutely. We spoke in depth, all of us, with our chiefs to be sure that we got the most information possible, because we have an annual town meeting, as you know, a special town meeting coming up. In case we do need to put things on the articles, and we have, and those are some of the things we mentioned. But we're here to save money as much as we can, and if it's something that the state can provide us, that'd be the way to go. I'm going to take my time and give it to people that have questions, and I do have some follow-ups afterwards. A couple of things you've said, but Mr. Miller, go ahead. You have the floor.
My name's Brian Miller. So I got three things. I see that there's some things at a bare minimum, and one thing that bothered me was when you said the thing about the sign for the 1-800 number.
Mm-hmm.
That you wish it could be bigger.
I do.
Well, why isn't it bigger?
Because that's, can you?
That'd be something that our town could do if we wanted to make our signs bigger.
Those are standardized.
Oh, sir, there's a standardized through the Federal Railroad Administration. They have to be a certain size and a certain reflectivity and a blue background with white letters.
So then how come the community outreach developer says that she wishes that it could be bigger?
So I'm saying that
Right.
because I think some people don't notice them, but if
Yeah.
it were bigger, you could have a line of sight issue as well.
I
My
think
point
that's-
is, I want people to be aware of
Right.
those signs.
It's just things like that give a little hint into where the mindset were on certain things, like the 31 people that got included, but the rest got left out. And this was apparently 10 years ago that we did this study. What happens when a real world situation occurs? Is there going to be a system in place that they can then approach to get funding, or is this going to have to become a legal route where they seek
No, what's identified and what was approved in the certificate is what we've advanced.
bare minimum again? Like,
Well,
why
I mean-
not? Why not try to please the people that live around there a little bit more?
Standard evaluation done by the FTA standards
Right.
that we do across
We're
the
not-
entire
I don't know if you spend a lot of time in this town, but there's not a lot of things that we do that are standard to a lot of the towns around here. We have a lot more standards for ourselves that other people don't have apparently around the Commonwealth. There's a lot of things that we don't want to have happen here that are going to happen if we don't say things like stop, like a bare minimum of 31 people, where there's clearly people here that are going to have.
That's actually
Those-
quite a number
those-
of people in the community.
Right. I mean,
How come there's still people that are worried about? Then how come there's still people that have issues? Then
well, I think because you're seeing change, and change is always difficult. And you've had the ambient
I
noise.
think it's the fact that they've saw that their neighbor got mitigation because they were 1 or 2 houses away from it. They didn't get anything.
No, and I've had several of those come to my attention, not just in Freetown, but
And
elsewhere.
what's your answer
where-
to them?
My answer is, I
That's,
pull up. the
Yeah.
plot plan that shows where the lines are, shows the topography, and shows how it fit into the analysis. And if it is, and it could be somebody around the corner or across the street, they don't have the same level of ambient noise, or their house is elevated more. There are a number of different variables, but I've addressed each and every one of them.
But when it comes time to the trains running,
Yes.
are they going to be able to reapproach the situation once we have somebody come in? Because I do basement, right?
Mhm.
Houses crack when houses get built up somewhere else.
Sure.
Now we're gonna have trains running through more times. You're gonna have cracks in people's foundations that weren't happening before. You know, you're gonna have a lot of things that happen after the train starts running. That there needs to be a program in place that citizens can then approach
Well,
to get mitigation.
I would
at that
suggest
point.
to you that what we've done was approved by through the certificate process, through the environmental review process.
Right.
And we did a comprehensive analysis. If stuff comes up later, I would suggest that it is brought to the attention of the
This is
MBTA.
happening. Sorry to cut you off, but this is happening in other towns, right? Like other towns that get trains do this before. Then afterwards, there's got to be complaints from some people, right? That
I
live outside
haven't,
the main-
I'm not familiar with them. That's just I'm
Okay.
not familiar with them.
All
No, I think we've done more than our due diligence in trying to build this thing with the vibration mats, with the houses that are most severely affected. Keeping in mind, you've had freight running here for hundreds of years. And before that, there was regular commuter rail service.
They're
So
running
if
at
you're
10
near
miles an hour,
tracks,
20.
if
10
you're near
miles an hour.
tracks, you're going to be near trains.
Been upgraded to allow.
No, I
And
get
they're
it.
a lot
I get
better.
that. I get it. I get it. I have some. I get. I understand that you live near a train. You bought a house near a train. It could happen.
Why-
But there should be some mitigation if the South Coast Rail is approaching it from. You know, we did everything we could to get it done. But why not see if you can get a program in place of some sort, or see what other towns have done with their community outreach development coordinators, that after the train has been running, what do they do to solve the problems that have now occurred that weren't?
Well,
way
we can
before.
certainly bring it to railroad operations. My guess is that there isn't much other than somebody bringing a complaint forward and then having other people
Be a case by
support
case.
that.
All right.
But tax dollars are what's paying for this right now, and the MBTA is loath to just say, yeah, we're going to set another pot of money aside in case. They really need justification before there would be an expenditure.
Now, the other thing was that Carlos, I think, answered the question, asked the question. These trains will not be running at 80 miles an hour with these. They won't be shut down for the 80-mile-an-hour runs, right? Because you said that there'll be the crossings will always be operational.
Oh
during
gosh,
the-
yes. Yeah,
during
you
even
mean the
test
gates and
runs,
everything?
during
Yes.
the test runs and
You
everything.
can't even run the test trains without all that stuff working. So that is true. And by the way, where those crossings are, there's not a whole, maybe between Chase Road and all the way up on that side, you could get up to speed. But you see, with all these crossings and the fact that we have Freetown Station, getting out of Fall River to Freetown, you don't have a lot of room. So they're probably not going to be going that fast in a lot of areas
Yeah,
here.
and the train itself is the speed is kind of at some point, regardless, right? The size of the train at 10 miles an hour can do a lot of damage too.
Oh, the freight trains can do huge
But-
damage.
But
Yep.
that's the thing is there needs to be some outreach for the schools. There needs to be some.
Oh, we're
you know,
we're on that. We're very much
And that
on
was
that.
my one. That was my concern was that the bare minimum seems to be going on when it comes to the people that live near the trains, and no 80 miles an hour with it not operational. So that's good. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Samantha Tripp. I live at the corner of Walnut and Elm. Both selectmen have children that play at my house, and I abut the train track. So I just want to point out that you guys ran this test in 2018, and then you cut down all the trees in 2020. So the test of the noise that you said was 55, 60 at my house is not 55 or 60, because I had trees there that you got rid of that, according to you, stop noise. That's my first.
No, let me correct you on that. That trees are a visual barrier, not an acoustical barrier.
Okay. But I can get trees through your program to stop the noise.
No, it is in the noise mitigation program, but it's largely a visual barrier, which we've recommended to people who said, my windows aren't that old, my doors aren't that old, I have mini splits, but I don't like looking at the tracks. So we suggest arborvitae.
Okay. And then the noise of 70 dBs are damaging to ears and 120 are detrimental to health. But the train's horn is going to be blowing at 90 to 120, if I quoted you from about 10 minutes ago. Right. So I have 3 kids. So how's that going to affect their health in 10, 20 years? We play outside all the time. I live like 1980.
I can't answer that, ma'am. That's the regulation. That is what their horns are allowed to be at.
But if I sign your contract, then I can't sue you if anything goes wrong.
Not my contract.
No, that's noise.
Ma'am.
That's what Jones paying. And if you wanted to sue, I suppose you could. But you are one of the later construction
Mhm.
ones that came in. I remember this. And you, I think, made it in at just that 1 decibel over.
Yep.
Right? Yeah. But you are right there at the crossing.
Yeah, no, I am. And you blow your horn 3 times a day. And when I bought the house, I live next to train tracks. I get all of what you were saying.
Mhm.
I'm just trying to say that you guys gave us $5,000 and my house qualifies for 24 windows. And using your program, I can only get 5 windows if me and my husband install them ourselves, which is kind of crazy because, like, what about the other 19 windows that we qualify for? Can't get those because we don't get that enough money.
But you have newer windows in that.
I
No,
don't. My
they're
house
not
is from
acoustic.
1900s and my windows are probably from 1950.
The program is set up the way the program's set up, and I don't oversee that. But we did identify, you're right, we did identify them quite a while ago, and we have found that there have been, in some instances, difficulty getting bids that are reasonable, or even getting bids at all.
Yeah, no, and I got a bid and it's reasonable, but it's also been 4 months that I'm waiting on a check from the MBTA that still hasn't come.
Oh, God. Okay.
If possible, I'll chime in for a second. If there is a check that needs to be done or whatever the final steps are for her and for anybody else in town that's still waiting for any cash or assistance from the MBTA, if you could, can you put a bug in someone's ear at the finance department and get that going? Because we're trying to prepare as much as possible. And as I can hear from what I can understand, it's taking a little while to get these bids out and get them back. And I can understand. I'm sure there's some stipulations that they must meet.
No,
So
And we only get half the money, so like I have to pay for the windows $5,000, and then they're gonna send me a check for $2,500. Then when the installation's done,
you get the
they'll get the other
25.
half. So I'm out $5,000-$6,000 before I get any money back.
Well, I definitely will follow up on that check.
yeah, keep us in the loop as well. For not just you, Mr. Tripp, but anybody that needs assistance. If you can't communicate, we'll communicate on your behalf. That's an option. Please keep this in mind. Anybody else have any other questions?
Linda McKenna, and I don't live near the track, but the lights that do not work, on, off, testing and all that, my question is, can they be covered? Like if your town's gonna put in a street light and it's non-operational, there's a tag over it. So
You
it's
mean if
not
they're
running.
not? It's the problem is that now they're going to be operational, with the exception of Richmond and Forge, with only sporadic outages now. So it wouldn't be worth doing it now. But I hear you. That actually was a suggestion that came up with us, but they decided because we didn't know, and it's freight that's using the tracks right now. It's not commuter rail, and the freight traffic is late, running at night. So they were not exactly enthusiastic about covering them because they weren't sure that they were going to be out all the time. Now we know they're going to be operational, so there wouldn't be any point in bagging them, like signs.
So, Mr. Tripp, we're going to have you ask your question, and then we do have some online questions after that. So we're going to kick it over to some online questions, and then if we have anyone else in the room, we'll go back to you.
Stephen Tripp. I have. You said that the last train's going to be like 11 o'clock at night.
Again, the final schedule has not been finalized by railroad operations.
Idea what time the morning one's going to start?
Pardon me?
Any idea what time
Yeah,
the
there'll
morning?
probably be one. I'm guessing around 5. I can't, out of Fall River and New Bedford.
So what time would that be going through a sonnet?
I can't tell you that because I don't have the schedule right now. But if it's leaving Fall River, 20 minutes maybe to get to the Freetown station.
5:20. Going through.
Something. If 5 o'clock is accurate, then it would be 5:20. Yeah, ish.
You have the property that you have at Ridge Hill Road, so where they
Yeah,
put all the
the
stuff.
Campanelli. Yeah,
Campanelli. Is that going to become a transfer station?
that's going to become a maintenance of way facility. So instead of, if there's an out of service locomotive, for example, had a problem, rather than towing the thing up to Reedville, it could be maintained there. So the layovers themselves are not maintenance facilities. But this is for any kind of repairs, supplies, things like that.
Doesn't Excel take its fluff stuff there
Oh,
and put it
Excel
on the
has
train?
access to the siding there. Yeah, but that's
So it's
not.
So it's a transfer station.
No,
I'm sorry.
Excel is a separate.
I'm not trying to be
facility.
rude, but this is MBTA related. So we're not going to take it in that direction today. Thank you.
How did you turn around and notify all these people that was supposed to be so close to the track?
How do we notify? That's subcontracted to Jones Payne, which does this kind of work nationally. They did Green Line Extension. And they did, I think, a series of letters, door hangers.
Yeah, because I got a postcard in the mail, and then I kept
From Jones Payne? No, I think you
No.
got an advertisement.
from somebody else that was saying they were doing
Yeah.
the windows for the MBTA.
We pulled that when we found out that was bad. That was some vendor who decided to say, we're authorized by the MBTA to do this. I'm sorry you got that. We pulled those.
Do you have any idea how many cars are going to be going through like the four corners out of that 100 cars 125 parking spaces you're going to have? How much traffic for the town?
Oh, traffic's going to be relegated to the peak period. So in and out of stations. I don't expect a huge amount of traffic at Sonnet at all, but it'll be peak period. You'll see it. You already see it in the morning now if you try to go get a coffee. But it'll align with when people are going to the station and leaving the station.
Well, let me piggyback off something Mr. Tripp asked. The Campanelli siding. I know about trains. Not just because they blow horns or they go fast or they're big and whatever they are. Is the train's going to be on when they're fixing that broken caboose or broken train engine, whatever they're fixing at the Campanelli Drive? Will the engine be idling the entire time throughout the night when they're fixing the train or the cabin or whatever they're trying to fix?
So
Will they be on?
go ahead, Jim.
Normally, so number one, I'm not exactly sure with regards to Campanelli. There's going to be a lot of office space in there.
Yeah.
Okay. With regards to locomotives, you're not going to have a prime mover, which is the main engine running, or head end power running while they're actively working on the equipment.
Thank you.
Okay. The layover facilities are a different story. You will have head end power running in there. You will have ground power, and you will have prime movers running. I don't think you have a layover facility.
That's in Fall River, so
We have two.
Yeah. So that's not going to affect you.
thank you.
But with regards to Campanelli, and I don't believe they're going to be doing any heavy maintenance work down there. That's what
No.
Southampton Street, Boston Engine Terminal, Reedville, everything will be brought up to Boston to have any heavy repair work done. So whether that's put dead in tow and brought up there by another train set, double drafted, whatever, I don't think you're going to see the heavy work being done at Campanelli. It's going to be more of, if there's safety appliances that need to be addressed or whatever, that'll be done by a carman.
That's great news. Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome, sir.
We have an online question.
We won't forget about you. We
We'll
already
move
queued
on.
them up, so you just hang tight.
Okay, we have a question from Rebecca. What is meant by ROW grade crossings, and are there any non-ROW grade crossings that will have less safety features than discussed thus far?
ROW simply means right of way. So the grade crossing is in the railroad right of way. Apologize for the alphabet soup, Rebecca. And so all crossings are in the right of way, by the way. They cross the right of way. Wherever we're going to have commuter rail trains running through crossings, they're going to have all the same lights, gates, markings.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Yes.
Kevin Lyons, 103 Richmond Road. Is there a way, I spoke to the engineers, I guess, up in Boston. I actually talked to Gene, and I guess I'm unsatisfied. My house is 180 feet to the track on my porch. Is there some other way that someone could come out and reassess my property? I know the engineers are doing it from behind the desk or whatever.
Do you mind sharing your address again?
Yeah, 103 Richmond Road.
103 Richmond.
I'm right up the Richmond Road North. So not only do I have the crossing,
I think I remember this.
Yeah. I have the crossing there at Beechwood.
Yeah, Yep.
We also have, I mean, Forge, actually, it's by me, right? So, is there any way, I mean, am I just SOL? I did wait. I went through, I did wait, and I did see it in I think it was the Taunton Gazette. So I didn't call right away. But can somebody else, can we have a reassess?
What I can do is run it by the noise mitigation team
Okay.
to see if you fall within or without. But I think you're more ambient noise, and I think you're less impact on track, if I recall, and I'm probably not recalling. But I would need your contact information.
Yeah.
And I will have them look at 103 Richmond again. That's the best I can do right
So
now.
that's, I mean, so they'll just, I mean, that's it. We'll just.
They'll
try to
show
get it
me
in.
on a schematic
Okay.
where you are and where the impact line is,
So
and then
then-
I'll know if you fall within or without.
Okay.
Can I have your contact information?
Yeah. I'll give it to you right after.
Thank you. I didn't need it on the microphone.
Do we have any additional questions?
Questions?
There was only
There
one
more
question.
online ones,
Yes,
or no?
thank you. There was
No.
only one, and thank you, Luann, for reading it.
My next?
Yes. Thank you,
Okay.
sir.
Hi, Ron Cloutier, 17 High Street, Sonnet. My property abuts the railroad tracks right there at the crossing. And so I fell within that 55 decibels, according to the noise study back in 2013 when that study was done. I know Mr. Miller mentioned it earlier. Is there going to be any follow-on studies being done because things change, the atmosphere changes, sound's going to change. So I'm just curious if that's going to be something in the future.
So that is not the plan right now. This is not the only community that's raised this as a concern. I was recently in Taunton and the same thing came up. Equipment could change. The volume of equipment could change. Anything can change. I mean, it's not a static environment. It's dynamic. It changes all the time. We hope. We hope that technology changes. We have continuously welded rail. We have vibration masks. We have a lot of things in the infrastructure that should help with some of the noise. It's not going to help with the horns, that they're going to be there. But a lot of the infrastructure design is to mitigate to the extent possible the noise that comes from these trains. That said, should things change, we would have to have contact, you would have to contact the MBTA. And that would be your best route, to just get in touch with railroad operations primarily and see if they have additional complaints from, say, a similar region. And then they would do it. But there is no program in place right now to readdress what's already been approved in our certificate for advancing.
So I simply disagree with that assessment. I mean, the decibel noises are, in my view, are way above 55 decibels. Those ones are very loud, as everybody here can probably attest to. And there's got to be some route for residents to file complaints for further looking at this issue.
Well, I mean, I think you certainly can put something in writing and it can be shared, but I think the analysis was done. I don't think
That was 10 years ago.
I know, I understand that, but it was based on having commuter rail trains running through where we already have freight. I mean, that didn't change. What changed in some instances was new construction, but the house where it is, where your house is, has been there, saw freight, has the same level of ambient noise, that hasn't changed. Whether it's sirens or truck traffic or anything else, all that figures into the equation. But I mean, if once this is all done and you're, completely unsatisfied with it, I would suggest you contact railroad operations.
Okay. So you mentioned earlier that trains are going to be operating past 10 p.m., 11 p.m. So I know we did mention about quiet hours, but now we have quiet hours around airports. Can we get quiet hours around the towns? I mean, it's maybe you can.
Again, the only option you have is for the town to apply for a quiet zone for the Federal Railroad Administration.
And that's at the expense of the town.
Yes.
Why wasn't that incorporated into the planning so MBTA can eat that cost?
MBTA completely does not adopt quiet zones. Is not in favor.
Now it becomes cost prohibitive for even the towns to incur that cost for that type of a zone.
Yes, it is. I would agree.
Okay, thank you. And one other question for safety. Recently, earlier this year in February, there was a massive train accident in East Palestine, Ohio. What mitigations can we have been done so far to avoid that here?
Well, first of all, that was a freight train that was carrying hazardous materials. We strictly passenger rail. The only hazardous material that would be exposed would be that we have 2,000 gallons of diesel fuel on the locomotive. Diesel fuel has a high flash point. It would have to be a pretty hot fire in order to ignite the diesel fuel for it to burn. The only other thing would be if the fuel tank was breached, it would be a environmental issue. Hopefully, fire department gets there as soon as they can, and they could start doing any damming, diking, diversion operations to try to keep the environmental impact to a minimum. Obviously, they would then notify the environmental protection. We have an environmental department within the MBTA, and again, that was just something. Hopefully, if that does happen, that would be the effect. We're not carrying hazardous materials across the rail. So East Palestine, yeah, that was a whole different ball game, and what happened there was a shame, if you ask me. But I'm not going any further. But again, the biggest hazardous material we have would be the diesel fuel. The coolant on the locomotives is a non-toxic, and possibly some hydraulic oil that but part of the systems that are used within the locomotive and the train set itself. Hazardous materials wise, impact very minimal.
Okay. And I think you mentioned earlier, we talked about the exercises. Those are not going to be held annually.
Not here in Freetown.
Right.
We do hold them annually, but again, we spread the training exercises amongst the various municipalities that are within our system.
But other municipalities are invited.
Yes, but they are right. They're invited to attend, to watch, observe at any time. But as far as them coming here to Freetown every year, as much as we'd love to do that for every municipality, we can't.
Now, is that something for the fire department to incorporate into their training plan on a regular basis?
A lot of shortfalls and equipment needs. Can everybody hear this without go to the microphone?
Don't worry, we'll get one for you, Chief.
You stay right where you're at.
This is uncharted territory for Freetown. Yeah. It's uncharted for the whole region. The exercise was very beneficial, but we keep talking about annual training. Keep in mind, MBTA, South Coast Rail, they didn't fund that. That was on your pocketbook and everybody in this room's pocketbook. We funded that out of our training budget. So if that's going to come back annually, that's something we need to think about. But my department, as well as the police department, I've spent hours writing SOPs, and the whole region. We have a group, we call them the train chiefs right now, that are getting together, meeting the people that the departments of the South Coast Rail is affecting, to come up with regional plans and SOPs, mutual aid agreements, and all the things we'll need to have in place before this happens. But again, there's no money. So it's going to fall on us, or grants, or these earmarks and whatnot. But all that stuff takes time. It takes time. Try to go order a new car, right? How long does it take you to get that? I have a fire truck that's been ordered since September of 2021 that I'm probably going to have in December. So all these things take a lot of time. These trains are coming. But I can assure you that the fire department and the police department will be prepared to handle the incidents when the time comes. We have a very good They're a very good group of people there, and my training officer is very good too. So, but we do have a plan there as far as that goes. I wouldn't be worried about that.
Thank you so much.
And like I reiterated before, we've had multiple discussions from the town perspective with our chiefs and local firefighters and police. A lot of discussions, like sometimes weekly, if not monthly. It happens quite often, so we have a pretty good idea what's going on. Anybody else have any additional questions online?
We have one more online question.
I have one from Zoom from Michelle Lee. The trains will be traveling at 80 miles per hour. The majority of the time they are in town, ? So 26 times per day, they will be passing through at 80 miles per hour?
No, they will not. I think you're going to see more like 35 to 55, but in certain stretches, they can get up to their maximized authorized speed is 79 miles per hour. And that's only when they have enough time to ramp up to get there and enough time to slow down. Remember, a train traveling 55 miles an hour takes over a mile to stop. So they have to keep all of that in mind. And it's not 26 either, by the way. Thank you, Holly.
Right, 26 total.
Total trips is 26.
Total trips, right. And the two lines.
Yeah, they
Thank
split.
you.
Yep.
One question I have, one additional question I have is because a lot of the concerns I've heard from real close residents is the level of testing that was done and how they don't agree with seeing the noise, right, or whatever, and how things change. I guess my question is in a lot of times, you do testing. Are they doing any backup testing? In other words, you have a company coming out doing the testing. Are we just taking their word as gospel?
You're talking about the noise analysis?
Yeah.
So that wasn't actually physical testing. That's an analysis that looks
Literally
at the
just
different
online
layers.
looking at it based on
They do come out, yeah.
topographics
They
and-
come out in certain areas because sometimes things, simple things. That is done live. Also, if there's been a major construction project, for example, and topography changes, they have to come out and get eyes on it. So that does happen.
That's
But follow up, we have to get everything approved, and then the certificate is signed off by the powers that be, and then that's it. That's your roadmap.
Yeah, no, I get it. It was just a question.
It's a
so.
reasonable one.
We said we'll email you that. I mean, it's
Appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah,
Yes.
we'll save a tree if you could send online.
That's how you're getting it. Yeah,
Perfect.
you're not
Yeah,
getting it in
don't
the
print,
mail.
don't take any trees down from me. I do have a question. It's probably Jim and Holly, probably up to your alley here. You're probably gonna throw a CFR at me, Jim, but I want to hear it anyways. As you know, maybe here in Freetown, we have the state forest. We have people using it for recreation activities, from horses to mountain bikes. We just had the Freetown 50 this past weekend, right? And your fencing, as beautiful as it is, that across the sun, it's shiny, but we also have a lot of wildlife. Any thought of breaking up the fence? Not breaking up is a bad word, but like a pass through in the fencing, so that it's cut 3 feet, and right behind is a 3-foot section that's replacing it, but it still allows wildlife and motorcyclists, bicyclists, pedestrians. I know you're gonna say we don't want people playing on the train. We don't want anybody playing on the train.
We don't want anyone.
But we also want wildlife and everybody else to be able to enjoy their town.
There is a 6-foot gap,
inch.
a 6-inch gap at the bottom of the fence for small wildlife
Okay.
passage back and forth. That's kind of the MBTA standard fence detail
Mhm.
along the right of way. We can't put gaps in the fence, but there are. I mean, I don't know necessarily in Freetown, but the locations that fencing was evaluated. You'll notice not the entire right of way is fenced. So areas, there are certain locations where there's maybe not people, houses close by, but there's wetlands and other sort of natural habitat. There are locations that there is not fencing specifically for that reason. But areas where there is high people and high likelihood of access to the track, we just can't have the people go on the track.
No, we agree there. We want nobody on the tracks. We agree.
That was part of what we looked at.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we also,
We have
for
turtle
wildlife,
crossings.
I was just going to say, wildlife crossings mean more than turtles.
I like the turtle
So
crossing.
We do have a great turtle population here.
Along the tracks themselves, there are areas where we've cleared out ballast, and it's sort of longer
so
tie
they could-
sections, so that actually smaller critters, obviously the ones that could get under the fence, can get across the track without actually walking up and over the track. And again, that was a wildlife consideration, mostly for turtles, but other species use them as well, and it allows them to safely pass on either side of track, and those locations are usually where there is habitat.
That's right.
That's identified on
We
both sides of
identified
the
it,
tracks,
yep.
and they would likely want it. And that was based on a study the MBTA did on the Greenbush commuter rail, where we
Yeah.
actually tracked wildlife crossing back and forth across the track. And so that was why they were put in along this right.
Well, thank you for that. I know
I have more
that was a question that came in from the resident, so we want to be sure that was asked.
Online question.
Oh, sure.
It's from Melissa DeRoche. Is there testing done over time related to pollution, air, and water in areas near the tracks? They're also requesting that when you do speak in, the panel are having a little trouble listening right into the microphone, please.
Could you repeat the question, please? Sorry.
Okay. Is there testing done over time related to pollution, air, and water in areas near the tracks?
So I don't know that the MBTA does anything like that, but certainly DEP is monitoring that. I'm going to defer to Jim on that. Oh, you don't have it. I'm
Railroad
sorry.
operations
I thought you
doesn't
looked
do that.
smart for a second. He knew the answer.
Well,
So,
I mean, as part of our permits for the project, our environmental permits, we have to do, comply with certain things and monitor for so many years
We do.
post-construction before we can close those permits out. So there is that level of monitoring and compliance and making sure things were built according to plan. And we can't close those permits out unless, we can show that all of that work.
but I can tell you that DEP does regular air quality monitoring, and not just as it relates to trains, but we have Bristol County has one of the worst air quality levels in the state.
Can you repeat your answer? She
sorry.
couldn't hear you.
It's
Just
still
cut
not
right
loud
into
enough.
it.
Sorry. I'm just put it in my mouth. No, so I was saying that, we have environmental permits, both through the towns, DEP and Army Corps for the work along the right of way. And that does require some post-construction monitoring and as well as verifying compliance with the plans as proposed. So there is that level of compliance for monitoring. It mostly deals with wetland and waterway resources, as well as stormwater management.
I have a couple questions.
I'd like to circle back to a couple of things we talked about earlier, if I may. Let's go back to police and fire, right? So thank you for the information with the Christie grants and everything else. I'm sure that's something we're going to look into. If we haven't already, we'll continue down that path. Now, a lot of people, when they think of the train, they think of traffic impacts, which we are concerned about as well. However, looking at the police and fire side of the house, I don't want to speak to anybody. If you need to meet a backup chief, let me know, okay? But let's say my concern is, and I think the town's concern is, with having an MBTA station in town, we're going to have an increase of potential, crimes, maybe some drugs, maybe homelessness, things like that, right? Those are common things we've seen from other towns that have gained a train station in their towns. So is there a program that provides, in a sense, the assessment back from our, like we do ambulance abatements? Is there an abatement from the MBTA or state that towns receive back in case we get called for 8 fire calls a day, 3 police calls a day? Is that something that us as a town need to absorb into our budgets, or is that something that MBTA is going to provide an abatement of sorts?
Do you have any answer to that? I don't have, not to my knowledge. I don't believe there is. I do think that that's where the grant programs would be very helpful.
Sure.
Like any other agency, the funding has to be carefully monitored, and the outlays are always predetermined and usually in 5-year increments.
Oh, of course.
But I hear what you're saying. I will say that where we have such an intense focus on safety, every station is going to be extremely well illuminated. There are going to be cameras. And then the MBTA police have asked that whenever there's an incident that the chief hears about, we notify T police as well. And they may have to up the ante on some of their patrols in the region. The Freetown station itself is set back.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another reason for having all the illumination and the cameras in there. But the homelessness has not been an issue here. That's been an issue and has been an issue before trains in more the urban centers. And we do know that in, for example, New Bedford and Fall River, they have homeless coalitions that the cities have put together, comprised of social workers, police, and other outreach folks that deal with the homeless. But my goal with the homeless is to try to get them away from the tracks. And I've been working very hard on that in all 3 cities, Taunton as well. That has not been an issue, to my knowledge, when new stations go in. I think you have Greenbush. It did not come up there. You know, a lot of activity.
Right.
Exactly. It keeps people wanting to stay away.
Oh, sure. As you can imagine, us as a town, like we said, I've said it multiple times, we have discussed the pros and cons of having a station, the train, everything in between. We must plan ahead, like you folks must plan ahead to create new train lines and everything else. So those are the things that came up as part of our initial thoughts. Is like, hey, how do we mitigate this if it were to happen, right? So hopefully we're not beating you up too much, right? We're really curious about what's going on in town. You have a question, ma'am? And we just want to make sure we get the answers for the residents so that they're not wondering out there.
My name is Carolyn Kylie Moore, and I live down in the Assonet Bay Shores. And one of the things that end up being is the conduit for information in my neighborhood. We have a lot of elderly people, and they're all calling me, asking me about what's going on. I was like, I don't know, I'm going to go find out, you know. But I guess that it just brings up the next question. I know they're very concerned about safety. They're very concerned about traffic. They're very concerned about, you know, all the nitty gritty. And I will try to allay a lot of their fears that you've been working on this a long time. I guess the next question is whether or not we can do something a little more, I don't know, grassroots. Can we rally down at the gazebo? Can we, you know, serve a, I know this sounds totally corny, but, you know, lemonade and a cookie and just say, hey, this is what's going on. Or down at the station, kind of like a meet and greet. Because I didn't grow up around here, and I really appreciate down here, and I really appreciate the town. But I grew up around the trains. We loved the trains.
Mm-hmm.
We used to hop on the train and go into Boston and see all the concerts. We used to go to Mimi's house, and the train was just on the other side of the fence in our backyard. And we used to go over and lay with our eyes closed and see who could tell if the train was coming next and guess when the whistle was going to go. It was so exciting. It was such a great, it opened up our world.
Yeah.
We got to go everywhere. And we went into North Station. We didn't go into South Station. South Station was like China. It wasn't until I came down here I went to South Station with the Rainbow Workshop and all the little kids. You know?
Yeah.
But there's some great. We have to be careful. We have to be cognizant of the fact it's a huge change for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
We have to be cognizant of the fact that it's. My neighbors are calling in asking if we're going to put a stoplight in at the end of Narrows Road because they don't think they'll ever be able to get out of Narrows Road again. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know. But they thought that was Stop and Shop, and they thought that a lot. And I can understand where their concerns are. They've lived here their entire lives, or a long, long time, and there's some things they really don't want to change. So we want to mitigate that. We don't want to ruin their quality of life. But maybe a little nitty gritty grassroots, you know, kind of thing.
I would love to.
Might go a long way.
Yeah, maybe we do. I like the lemonade and cookie idea, frankly. But I have a ton of materials. I would if we can set up a neighborhood meeting. And if you want to work with me on that, I'm more than happy to do that. I do. Yeah. I really have brochures will travel.
Yeah, because I think that would allay a lot of fears.
Sure.
And I think there are things that are going to come up that we're going to have to address. There are things
I totally agree.
Are going to happen. We don't want negative spin-off. It's going to be our job to mitigate the negative spin-off and do whatever we can. But the fact that our kids will be able to live here and maybe work in the city and live here and work along the way, or have, you know, friends and stuff come down that they don't need a car to get here. You know, my daughter's away at school, but the fact that she could get here with her buddies, you know, without a car would be a huge advantage.
It is. I'm so glad you brought that up. So we, you know, over the many years of me looking at this, I ran into college kids who were so disappointed when they got into a Boston area school and realized that just wasn't in the budget. And they didn't have a way to get there easily. And even kids going to Bridgewater State, they can go to Lakeville, get on the train, and it plops them right in the middle of the campus. That's a wonderful thing. But for many, many children and young adults, that option isn't there. And what about healthcare mecca? That's Boston. I mean, I already have a woman I know personally who is in treatment right now and relies on that train to get in and out of Boston.
Well, we were in trouble just getting the kids like to go up to a concert.
Sure.
You know, there's 2 trains. The last train comes in at 10 o'clock at night. It's like, okay, am I going to put my 17-year-old in an Uber? Or am I driving to Boston and trying to fit them all in the trunk? How am I going to get them here and there? So there's a lot of opportunities that we can consider. How many people from town drive to the Red Line to take the
Quincy
subway
Adams, yep.
into Boston because they can't get there from here? You know, there's a lot of that, and that's an expense. And they just did all the traffic part to get to the Red Line in Quincy. To get to the rest of
They only did 50% of the traffic part. I know, because I've done that so many times.
And they don't want to pay the $50 to park when they get to the other
That's
end.
exactly right.
So this is an opportunity.
Thank you. Yes.
But if there's anything, you know, like I said, all the 85 plussers are all going to be calling me in the morning. My phone's
Well, Joe's going to take your contact information so we can set something up. I would love to do that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
So,
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you guys? Just a couple generic questions.
You can state your name, sir.
Sure. Don Abbott, Taunton, Massachusetts. So once this is all constructed and finished, and I live in Fall River, how long is it going to take me to get to South Station every morning on my commute?
90 minutes.
90 minutes. Okay. Speed of the trains, you mentioned there's going to be a difference between the commuting speeds and the
Freight is very much slower.
So, and freight begins at what time to what time?
Well, commuter rail trumps freight all the time. So if commuter rail is on a schedule, that's the schedule. That's why we built sidings near all the stations so that the freight can pull off. Their hours are depending on what their customer base is.
So basically, these trains, and it just makes sense, right? You have a commute, but they could run anywhere from 5 in the morning until midnight.
Yeah,
That's what
they
I'm
could.
hearing, right? Okay. And I'm not familiar with all the crossings, but I see on Route 79 in Berkeley, there's a lot of work on the tracks.
Partly.
What is that called?
So that's that's Myrick's, the four sets of tracks. Yeah, that's because that's the split, and we have to have 4 sets of tracks so that there can be passing and then splitting down to the two cities. Oh, Joe pulled it up. Yeah.
So,
Atlee's right there.
See where the red splits off from
Can you
the.
point to it, Joe? Just yeah.
That's
you.
Myrick's. That's probably what you're talking about. That's where the
4 sets of tracks.
are.
Yeah, I was just curious. That's why we're all
So it
here.
allows trains 2 sets of tracks in both.
That was a
directions.
lot of work, and the big giant cantilevers there over. Yeah, that's where the split is.
That's it.
Okay,
very
thank
much.
you.
Do we have any additional questions from anyone in the audience?
So you said that you had no idea when this could be going. So if Maura Healy asked you tomorrow, right now, you can't even tell her a season that you might be having this train?
No,
ready to run?
but we have to brief the governor once we finish our internal discussions and get this contractor to pull some
So you
things in.
still know winter of next year, maybe, or
Oh God, no.
summer of next year?
No, listen, I'm not going to give you a date because I'm still trying to work
A
stuff
season.
out.
I just want a
I
season.
can't even give you a season because it'll be the wrong one.
That's
I promise you.
that's unacceptable. How is that? How was this a multi-million-dollar project?
It is.
And we can't even pin down what season.
I have the
This may be
testing
right.
and commissioning,
This is-
as I said, is an unknown.
Yeah.
And if it goes flawlessly,
If you had to put a bet on it right now, well, you wouldn't put a bet on it.
I am not a betting lady. Mm-mm.
Confidence,
Put a date
confidence,
out there and then
confidence
have it
is not
changed. It hasn't
high when it
So
comes.
right now
Thank
we're
you.
under a schedule.
Right.
That's right.
Internally. We
Big
owe a
one.
new schedule and time
This
frame
week.
This week to the GM and the governor, at which time they will make some decisions about some of the things that need to be decided on how we move forward.
There's a few things
And
that are
once
variables.
that schedule is agreed upon, then we can announce a date. But we can't put a date out if we don't have those decisions made up above.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one more question. I believe only one more. If it's maybe 2. But again, this is more of to get the information out, make sure people are getting the information in. That way, less questions down the road. I'd rather be upfront with everybody now than later, right? So my question is regarding the yearly assessment for the train. I don't know if you can speak to it briefly.
I don't know much about it. I know that yours is offset by your
Correct.
SRTA.
Correct. Our yearly assessment for this year, ballpark, is around $60,000 offset. So as the residents hearing this, yes, that's $60,000 coming out of your tax dollars for the year, right?
It has been. Let's keep in mind that has been consistently pulled out for bus service you don't have.
Yes, ma'am. And thank you that you saved me a couple minutes of talking.
There you go.
So thank you for that. However, as we move forward into a full-blown train station, 24 trips divided by 2 lines, our yearly assessment will go up beyond the 2.5 cap of, right? The beyond that 2.5% that we are capped at for taxes. So what does that look like? Are we looking at 6 figures, 100,000, 200,000? What's, you know?
I can't answer.
Right.
I really don't know.
It's more for awareness, so we kind of know the answer, but it's
So-
one of those things that we will be taxed on, folks, when we see this down the road. Not to take away from the train. This is part of doing business with the train, whether you voted for it or not. Or we didn't really get a chance, but that's a different story. But that is something that you are going to be seeing in your tax bills coming up at some point, right? Maybe not this year, the whole full impact, but future years you will see an increase, and you're not capped at a 2.5% override.
It's capped at 2.5.
So there's cap, but
Yeah,
from my understanding, MBTA whether it's MBTA or the SCR, one's capped and one's not. There's two
There's a
assessments.
cap on the assessment,
Okay,
and that's been in place anyway.
Yes.
So CERTA was going up too.
correct.
CERTA was not always 60 grand a year.
Right, but CERTA doesn't have that cap. CERTA can exceed the 2.5%.
CERTA can do a big bump, and I can't speak to what they're going to do
Right.
on that.
But bottom line is, if they go back and say, "Hey, 10%, 50% increase,"
I don't.
I know, I'm being high, and I'm being high for a reason. That is a possibility, highly unlikely. Well, right, but it is a possibility that they can say that 1%, or let's say we'll keep it simple, 3%, right?
And to my knowledge, that is a capped at 2.5 for
With
the
CERTA as
assessment.
well.
Well, no, I can't speak for the
For
bus.
CERTA, right?
But-
So
and I'm hoping that there will be a bus, because CERTA's looking at their routes right now, that will take people probably from Fall River, most likely into the Freetown station. But that would be on the Fall River assessment.
no, it's
So, and there's same thing, Fall River and New Bedford, their bus assessment, and they get fairly robust bus service, covered their MBTA assessment. It
Yeah.
did. So, and I just also would like to point out that this has been 30 years in the making, and it's been an extremely public process. From multiple meetings to meetings with Concoms to everything else, commentary on the certificate and the environmental review. And I guess because, people heard for 30 years that it was going to happen and then it didn't, and then it was going to happen again and then it didn't. There was a lot of skepticism. So what ends up happening is suddenly it really is being built, and it's a wake-up call. And I think some people were maybe caught a little bit off guard. And that's why meetings like this are so important, just to get everybody up to speed. This has been going on for a long, long time, but you probably didn't believe it was ever going to happen. And it is. Segmentation? Oh, you mean,
Phased it.
no, we did phase it, but yeah, it can't be segmented. We got in trouble.
all right. Last one, I promise. And it goes back, circling back to the noise mitigation program. I understand what you're saying as far as, hey, it needs to be capped at this point. You've had the assessments, but I don't like that answer. With all the respect to the process, and I understand there's a process, but like you said, topography changes, and you have to come out and do another study, right? In certain areas, well, to me, trees are certain areas. That's topography, right? You don't have that extra areas to block that noise from wafting over into your property. And I know we can't stop every single decibel going in, but our program, we should stop as much as we can. I know that's the backbone of that program is to make people more comfortable having the train in their backyard, essentially, right? Anything we can do or letter we can write, people we can poke, keep this program alive, and so that, because I'm sure there's going to be other people that maybe they weren't home that day, or they're out of town. There were seasonal. There was what is they call snowbirds? They were out in Florida, right? Instead of the Sonoma Bay shores. Who knows, right? Whatever we can do to keep that program alive and well, we need to try. So who do we go to? Who do we contact for that? Is that you folks? Is that a letter we got to write? A nice email? Like,
If you want to, I mean, the people that were eligible were contacted. There
Okay.
were no non-respondents. Correct.
and in your report, Holly, that you're going to send me, that small report you
No,
told me, right?
it's a lot of trees, so don't print it out.
Will it have every contact person that you've talked to, contacted,
No, so
accepted?
that report will have the evaluation that was done,
Mhm.
how the evaluation was done, what the background ambient noise was, and then that is the information that the certificate was determined on that identified which properties get mitigation. After that point, the project implemented a program to actually do the mitigation, and that program was done through Jones Payne,
Mhm.
which is a contractor. That is the one that went out and did the actual contacts And it's the same way that the Green Line Extension project was done. It was modeled after that system. So that, you know, the suite of options you can pick from is in that evaluation report, right? And how much money each person qualifies for and what standards were used for the evaluation. That's in the report. The implementation, the outreach, the getting the quotes, that was managed by the contract.
At any point, I'm sorry, I broke a promise. I said I wasn't going to ask anymore, but I have to follow up. Is there any follow up to that assessment? Like every couple of years, you'll go back and say, "Hey, we didn't look at this. We didn't check that." No.
What's in the
So it's
certificate?
cut. It's one and done.
Yeah.
Oh, I also don't like that. I want to put that on
And
record.
the way the noise mitigation is assumed is that once a project is approved and gets a certificate, that is the point in time at which the evaluation was done and that the properties that are there. So if there's new construction after that time, that doesn't get mitigation because you should have the construction should have known the project was coming and put the windows and things in if it's new construction, right?
Sure.
So that's, you know, it has to be a point in time. It can't be a forever evaluating.
No, and there's plenty of private sector construction and projects that go on that offer no noise mitigation at all. This is at least something. And while it may not be satisfactory to everyone, and I gather from this room it isn't, it is something that you wouldn't otherwise get. I mean, it's something coming through the project that is unique.
Thank you. All right. So we have one last question
another
that we'll
question.
take for the evening because of
Keith Schultz, 14 Forge Road. So I am right across from the tracks, and apparently I wasn't in your red lined area.
Mm-hmm.
And you took down a ton of trees. The train horns are much, much louder than they used to be. So I don't know how you say that trees don't block noise. They do absorb noise. I can see it in writing. If you look up right now, you can see that it is on writing that trees do absorb noise. And you took down a ton of trees, and it's twice as loud as it used to be. So if your guy came back now and took his decibel reading, I'm sure it would be much higher than it was 10 years ago.
Well, based on the analysis they didn't.
That was 10 years ago before they cut down trees.
Right. Well, they cut down trees to clear the right of way.
General scientific study shows that trees do not provide significant noise.
They are
do
a buffer.
provide a visual buffer, not us.
They do absorb noise.
And I'll chime in. Freetown is also known as Tree Town. We love our trees here in Freetown, so I understand both sides.
Maybe you should plant some more trees.
Oh no! As far as clearance to the train and make sure that you can see the train, I concur with that. That's something that absolutely.
We didn't randomly go around the town and cut them. We cut the right of way.
Thank you. And I want to applaud everyone for showing up, and these 5 individuals for showing up and being in the hot seat because they do have a job to do, and you know, they're kind of following the leader, so to speak. So I do want to say thank you because, you know, as you can tell, we have some residents that are unhappy, nervous, you know, whatever you want to call it. You know, change is always hard. So I do appreciate you coming here and giving us the answers, good, bad, or indifferent.
And Joe, can you just sorry.
How dare you, Joe?
I was just gonna say,
Put our contact information.
I mean,
up
you
just
can
really
find it if
quickly.
you Google
Yeah,
South
just
Coast
Google
Rail.
South Coast Rail,
But
you'll
there
find
is
us,
an
but-
email address, and that is probably the best way to put in questions and concerns. It's a monitored email, and those questions and concerns get distributed
Yeah,
to
you get
our
our
internal
e-blast
team.
every week, right?
I do get it, and lots of times you'll see that I post it on our Facebook.
That's what I thought. Mhm.
So that if I think there is going to be impacts to the traffic, I will have Lola or Luann put that on our Facebook so that I can get as much information out as possible.
Yes, thank you for
And
that.
if you're not signed up for it, you should sign up for it. I know some people don't like getting emails. As Jean said, it is very
very
broken
specific.
down by town, so you don't it's usually only a page and a half to 2 pages. It's not super long anyways, but you could
Sometimes
target
goes to 3.
Well, you can target your community if you want to just see what is happening in Freetown, or you know, you drive from Freetown to Taunton to go to work, you can sort of see what might be happening along the alignment. It's a super useful way to find out what's happening week to week on the project, and it does also have all the contact information in it as well. So it has the email. It actually, I think, has Jean's contact information as well. So, you know, it is super useful if you want to see what's happening. It is where updates will get posted once the schedule is done. When Jean is out in the community doing, you know, events, She didn't talk about them here, but I wanted to raise them. You know, they did do a series of videos that are for the schools for different age groups. It's a huge thing. We got a grant so that she could have those developed. You know, I forget the age groups. Jean can maybe expound on
Elementary,
those.
middle, high, and then general public.
So they're videos that the schools have been given that they can show to the kids. The idea too is that the kids will bring it home to the parents. So the kids learn the safety, they talk about it at home, and hopefully the parents understand. You know, again, as you all know, you've had slow moving freight trains down here that are sporadic. They don't come super often and they don't go really fast. And so there is some complacency around being in and around the tracks. And that is not going to be the case. I mean, no one should ever be walking on the tracks, regardless of what kind of train and how fast it is, right? I mean,
We agree with
just
that.
say that caveat. But, you know, so that, but the fact that now you will have trains that will be going faster, you know, the tracks are not a place to hang out, to play on, to drive your ATV on, to take your dog for a walk on. So,
Or to pitch
you know,
your tent on. I mean, none of that should happen.
So the school videos are super great, and that, you know, it was a
They're
big
on our
effort.
website, too.
You can link them there. But sort of trying to get the word out and get, you know, all ages to understand. I know Jean's done some safety meetings, operation safety meetings. They've had meetings with that, and, you know, talking
Public
about that
meetings,
as well.
and then I even met with a group of people with disabilities, because there's a whole stakeholder group that needs and wants to use public transportation, but has its own set of hurdles, so that they can operate safely. So we've met with different groups, and we'll continue to meet with different groups. I have literature, tons of literature that's really not burdensome to read, but is educational in nature. Again, the videos are great. Everything's on our website. We have the videos. We have our safety e-blast that we're sending out monthly. We have all that information out there. So anyone in here who wants to help spread the word, the tracks are not a place to recreate. And they never were, but that's going to change incredibly quickly as we get rolling with some test trains initially, and then finally with revenue service.
Thank you. All right, so we just have to do some side work here where we have to do some signatures and stuff.
Oh, we're
before we
dismissed.
Well, now, yeah, I got more questions.
Again, thank
No,
you.
just kidding.
Thank you so much. We really do appreciate everyone's time. Great questions.
I would like the PowerPoint sent to us as possible.
Oh, yeah, we can send you that. Jill, we need to send the PowerPoint.
Yeah. Killing me. Are you guys okay?
Oh, thank you. We have. Well,
I didn't eat dinner. I was.
thank you. Well, thank you for coming out.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah. Hanson, okay.
Oh, the old colony.
Certainly. Well, thank you. Yeah, but I'm glad you were able to join us. Thank you. Honest to goodness, huh? I know. That's right.
Mhm.
Look at this guy. Not on the boat today?
Yes, and they're gonna make sure you don't stay there.
Yeah, okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
how do you
Yeah.
effectively, I got what you're saying, how do you effectively do the sequence sweeping? I wonder if they count them as one, I don't know.
Hey, Bob. Yes.
Uniform traffic.
Yeah.
All right, so with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion made?
I will second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Selectman Lopes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
We are adjourned.